The room is quiet, and the hour is late. The only light comes from a small screen, its blue glow painting a face in pale, fleeting colors. On this screen, a world of curated lives scrolls by, an endless river of achievements, of beautiful meals, of sun-drenched vacations. Each image is a statement, a declaration of a life being lived. And in this silence, a question can arise, a question that feels both vast and intimate. Amidst all the running, all the striving, all the noise, what is the real imprint of my life? When the scrolling stops, and the likes fade, and the day is done, what is truly left behind? If this feeling resonates, know that it is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you have done something wrong. It is, perhaps, a symptom of our times, a quiet ache in the heart of the modern world. We have become experts in the art of the outward journey. We are taught to build careers, to accumulate possessions, to craft an identity for the world to see. We have become like magnificent ships, tirelessly navigating the surface of the ocean, creating countless ripples, charting courses to distant lands, yet never truly feeling the profound, silent, mysterious depth that lies just beneath the waves. Our anxiety, our stress, the persistent feeling of being unfulfilled. These are the storms that rage on that turbulent surface. But there is another way. There is an ancient path that does not lead outward, but inward. It is not an escape from the world, but a journey into its very heart, into the heart of our own experience. The timeless wisdom of the Buddhist tradition offers a map for this journey. It teaches us how to find a stillness that is not shaken by the storm, a peace that does not depend on our external circumstances. It guides us to discover that the most meaningful imprint we can ever leave upon this world is not what we build in the marketplace or what we display on a screen. It is the quality of the peace we cultivate in our own soul. It is the silence we learn to hold within the center of the storm. And that is the journey we are beginning now. We begin by acknowledging a feeling, an experience so common in our world that we often mistake it for the very air we breathe. It is a quiet hum beneath the noise of our lives, a subtle hollowness that persists even when our calendars are full. We can call it the echo in the void. It is the feeling of being in a crowded room and feeling utterly alone. It is the flicker of dissatisfaction after a long-awaited purchase. It is the sense, at the end of a frantic day, that we have been incredibly busy but have not truly lived. This is the starting point of our journey, not with judgment, but with a gentle and courageous curiosity. We must first look clearly at the landscape of this modern emptiness, to understand its contours before we can find our way through it. The first and most powerful feature of this landscape is the great illusion of connection. Never before in human history have we been so wired together. With a few taps on a piece of glass, we can see the faces of friends from across the world. We can witness events as they unfold on distant continents. We can access a torrent of human thought and creativity that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. We maintain lists of hundreds, even thousands, of friends and followers, a digital Rolodex of human connection. Yet, a profound and aching loneliness seems to be the shadow that follows this unprecedented connectivity. Why is this? Because this form of connection is often wide, but incredibly shallow. It is a connection of avatars, not of souls. We carefully curate the person we present to the world, posting our triumphs, our best angles, our most witty thoughts. In turn, we consume the curated highlight reels of others. It is a performance, a grand theater where everyone is both actor and audience. But in the quiet moments, backstage in the dressing room of our own minds, we know that the person being applauded is not the entirety of who we are. It is not the person who is afraid, or confused, or grappling with sorrow. And so, a dissonance is born. We receive likes, comments, and shares, these digital ghosts of affection. But they lack the warmth, the embodied presence of a true human gaze, of a shared silence, of a hand held in a time of need. This illusion of connection creates a subtle but persistent anxiety, the pressure to maintain the performance, and the deep, often unspoken fear that if people saw the real, unedited, vulnerable person behind the profile, they would turn away. We are surrounded by echoes of friendship, but starved for the substance of true communion. Flowing from this is the second feature of the void, the relentless spinning wheel of modern existence. Most of us are bound to a cycle that is so pervasive we rarely question it. We work, often at jobs that demand more and more of our energy and time, in order to earn money, so that we can consume things we are told will make us happy. A new car, a larger house, the latest technology, a more exotic vacation. This is the promise of the wheel. Happiness is just one more purchase away, one more promotion away, one more accomplishment away. But we all know the truth of this experience. The thrill of the new possession fades, often with shocking speed. The satisfaction of the promotion is soon replaced by the stress of the new responsibilities. The vacation ends, and the return to the wheel feels even more jarring than before. The goalpost is always moving. The promised land of enough is a mirage that recedes as we approach it. This cycle strips life of its deeper meaning. We become human doings rather than human beings. Our precious, finite life force is exchanged for currency, which is then exchanged for objects and experiences that provide only fleeting pleasure. Our days become a series of tasks to be completed, a checklist to be ticked off. We are so focused on the mechanics of living, on keeping the wheel spinning, that we forget to ask why we are running in the first place. This is not to devalue work or material comfort, but to question the belief that they are the ultimate source of fulfillment. When our entire existence is oriented around this cycle of work and consumption, we can begin to feel like a cog in a vast, impersonal machine, a feeling that our unique, irreplaceable life is being spent on things that do not truly nourish the core of our being. The echo in the void grows louder with every turn of the wheel. This brings us to the third, and perhaps most chilling, feature: the deep and abiding fear of insignificance. In a world that celebrates the grand, the loud, and the viral, there is an immense pressure to make an impact, to leave a legacy. But the definition of a significant life has become dangerously narrow. It is measured in metrics: the number of followers, the amount of wealth accumulated, the scale of one's public recognition. We are bombarded with stories of extraordinary individuals who changed the world, who disrupted industries, who amassed global audiences. And while these stories can be inspiring, they also sow a seed of terror in the ordinary heart. The question arises: what if my life is not extraordinary? What if I live quietly and love a few people and do my work without fanfare? Does my life matter? We begin to fear that our existence is just a faint, passing whisper in the roaring casamon of history. This fear is the engine of so much of our striving. It is why we chase external validation. We are desperately trying to carve our name onto the wall of the world, terrified that if we do not, we will simply vanish without a trace. This is the ultimate confusion about the nature of our life's imprint. We believe the imprint is the mark we leave on the outside world, a monument we build for others to see. We fear that the inner world, the landscape of our own consciousness, holds no inherent value unless it is translated into some grand, external achievement. The fear of being insignificant is the fear that our being, in and of itself, is not enough. To truly understand this, let us consider a story, a modern parable. Imagine a man named Arthur. He is, by all external measures, a success. He lives in a sleek, minimalist apartment, a smart home filled with the latest technology. He can command his lights, his music, his temperature, all with the sound of his voice. His life is a seamless stream of efficiency and entertainment. His mornings are filled with productivity podcasts, his evenings with algorithmically perfected streaming content. His home is a fortress, not against intruders, but against the intrusion of silence, of unstructured time, of unplanned thoughts. One evening, after closing a particularly important business deal, he comes home, expecting to feel a sense of triumph, of fulfillment. But he feels nothing. It's just another evening. He asks his digital assistant to play celebratory music, but the sound feels hollow, artificial. Then, something unexpected happens. A storm outside knocks out the power. Suddenly, the screens go dark, the speakers fall silent. The disembodied voices of his digital assistants vanish. For the first time in years, Arthur is confronted with absolute, unconditional silence. And in this silence, the vast, empty spaces of his expensive apartment seem to press in on him. The silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of the very feeling he has spent his life running from. The loneliness, the sense of meaninglessness, the quiet panic. He realizes that he has not been filling his home with things he loved. He had been filling it with noise. He had been using the constant stream of distraction as a shield against himself. The echo he now hears is not coming from the empty corners of the room. It is coming from the void within. This is the state many of us find ourselves in, knowingly or not. We are all, in some way, like Arthur, living in a world that offers us infinite ways to avoid the silence. This recognition, this seeing of the echo, is not a cause for despair. It is the necessary first step. It is the moment the patient acknowledges their illness, the moment the traveler realizes they are lost. It is a moment of profound honesty, for only when we have the courage to sit in the silent room, to listen to the echo in the void, can we begin to ask the questions that truly matter. Now that we have sat with this feeling, this modern emptiness, we must ask a deeper question. Is this feeling just a product of our specific time, a flaw in our digital age? Or does it point to a more fundamental truth about the nature of our own minds, a truth that has been understood for thousands of years? To understand the echo, we must first understand the room in which it reverberates, the very nature of the human condition itself. Having listened to the echo in the void, that pervasive hum of modern emptiness, we must now give it a name. In the ancient language of Pali, this fundamental human experience is called dukkha. This word is most often translated as suffering, but this translation is incomplete and can even be misleading. To hear the word suffering can conjure images of a pessimistic, dreary worldview, a philosophy that denies the possibility of joy. This is not the intention at all. A more accurate understanding of dukkha is a deep and subtle unsatisfactoriness, a dis-ease, or the inherent instability of conditioned existence. To understand dukkha is not to become a pessimist, it is to become a realist. The Buddha is often compared to a great physician, a doctor who refuses to acknowledge the existence of disease out of a fear of being negative is not a good doctor. A truly compassionate physician looks clearly and courageously at the ailment, diagnoses it precisely, and only then can they prescribe an effective cure. The recognition of dukkha is this first noble diagnosis. It is an act of profound kindness to ourselves, for it stops us from chasing illusions and allows us to begin the work of genuine healing. It is the moment we stop blaming the world or ourselves for this feeling of unease and begin to understand its very nature. Like a scientist studying a fundamental law of physics, we are simply observing the nature of our cage, not to despair, but to finally find the door. The Buddha described dukkha in three distinct yet interwoven layers. The first is the most obvious, the one we all know intimately. It is the dukkha of pain, or dukkha. This is the raw, undeniable pain of life. It is the headache that throbs in your temples, the sharp grief that pierces your heart when you lose someone you love. It is the sting of harsh criticism, the anxiety of financial uncertainty, the frustration of plans going awry. It is the unavoidable decay of the body through sickness and old age, and the ultimate certainty of death. This layer of dukkha needs little explanation, for it is the common ground of all sentient beings. No amount of wealth, power, or fame can build a wall high enough to keep this reality out. It is the first arrow, the unavoidable wound of being alive in a fragile, mortal body. To deny this reality is to live in a state of fantasy. To acknowledge it is the beginning of wisdom, a sobering recognition that sensitizes us to our own vulnerability and the vulnerability of everyone we meet. It is the shared foundation upon which compassion is built. We all experience this pain, and in that shared experience, we are connected. The second layer of dukkha is far more subtle, and it strikes at the very heart of our search for happiness. It is the unsatisfactoriness of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the pain that is woven into our pleasant experiences. Think of a moment of pure joy, watching a breathtaking sunset, laughing with dear friends, the feeling of love, the thrill of success. These moments are real, they are beautiful, and they are to be cherished, but they are all, without exception, temporary. The sun will set, the friends will go home, feelings will shift, success will become a memory. The dukkha here is not in the joy itself. It is in our clinging to it, our desperate desire to make it permanent. It is the subtle anxiety that whispers this won't last even in the midst of our happiness. It is the sadness that follows when the beautiful experience ends. It is the ache of nostalgia, the bittersweet longing for a golden past that can never be recaptured. This is the engine of the hamster wheel. We achieve a goal, and for a brief moment, we feel relief and pleasure. But because the feeling is impermanent, it fades, and the underlying sense of lack returns, pushing us to chase the next goal, the next purchase, the next experience. We are like someone trying to hold water in their fists. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. This form of dukkha reveals a profound truth. Our suffering is not caused by the absence of happiness, but by our attachment to the fleeting nature of it. We are constantly trying to build a permanent home on shifting sands, and we are constantly surprised and heartbroken when the tide comes in. The third layer of dukkha is the deepest and most pervasive. It is the unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence itself, or sankhara dukkha. This is the background hum of unease that persists even when nothing is obviously wrong. It is that subtle feeling of restlessness, of incompleteness, that haunts our quietest moments. It is the reason we compulsively reach for our phones, turn on the television, or seek any distraction to avoid simply being with ourselves. What is the source of this deep, background anxiety? It comes from the fundamental nature of reality itself. Everything we experience, including our own sense of self, is conditioned. This means it is made up of other things. It is dependent on causes and conditions, and it is constantly in a state of flux. Your body is a collection of cells, dependent on food, air, and water. Your thoughts and feelings are fleeting phenomena, arising and passing away in response to internal and external stimuli. Your very identity, your personality, is a construct built from memories, beliefs, and habits. There is no solid, separate, unchanging you at the core of it all. There is no firm ground to stand on anywhere. This inherent instability, this constant state of becoming and dissolving, is sankhara dukkha. It is the dis-ease of being a temporary assembly of processes, rather than a solid, independent entity. It is the echo in the void, given its final, most profound name. It is the fundamental vibration of a conditioned world, a world where nothing is ever truly fixed or finally secure. To make this understanding practical, the Buddha offered a powerful parable, the story of the two arrows. Imagine a person walking through the forest who is suddenly shot by an arrow. There is a sharp, immediate, physical pain. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable dukkha of life sickness, loss, accidents, the pain that is simply part of the human package. It is outside our ultimate control. Now, imagine this person's reaction. They cry out, "Why me? This is a disaster. I can't believe this happened. My whole life is ruined." They become consumed with fear, anger, and self-pity. This entire mental reaction is the second arrow. It is an arrow they fire into themselves right next to the first one. The pain from this second arrow is often far greater and lasts far longer than the pain from the first. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life. The second arrow is the suffering we create. Our resistance to the first arrow, our craving for reality to be different than it is, our stories of blame and victimhood, these are the poisons we dip the second arrow in. The entire path of spiritual practice can be seen as learning how not to fire that second arrow. We cannot always avoid the first arrow, but we can learn to receive it with wisdom, with acceptance, and with compassion for ourselves. By understanding the nature of dukkha, we see that railing against the first arrow is futile. We learn to tend to the initial wound with grace, rather than inflicting a second, deeper wound upon ourselves through our own reactivity. Therefore, seeing dukkha is not a curse. It is the key that unlocks the cage. It is a profound diagnosis that points directly to the source of our deepest troubles. It shows us that our fundamental dis-ease does not come from a flaw in the world or a flaw in ourselves, but from a basic misunderstanding of the way things are. We suffer because we desperately crave permanence in a world that is defined by change. We suffer because we seek ultimate satisfaction in things that can only ever be temporarily satisfying. This realization, as sobering as it may be, is the beginning of true freedom. If our suffering is caused by our relationship to things, and not the things themselves, then it means the solution is within our power. We can change our relationship. If the pain of change is so central to our experience, if our happiness is lost because it is temporary, then we must look more deeply at this quality of change itself. We must investigate the profound and universal truth of impermanence. Having seen that our deep-seated unsatisfactoriness, our dukkha, is profoundly connected to our struggle against change, we must now turn our gaze directly upon this universal law of change itself. We must contemplate the truth of impermanence. In the Pali language, this is called anicca. To truly understand anicca is to understand the fundamental rhythm of the universe, the great cosmic breath of arising and ceasing that animates all of existence. We often think of the world as being made up of solid, stable things, a mountain, a tree, a house, a body. But this is an illusion created by the slow pace of change. In reality, there are no things, only processes. There are no nouns, only verbs. The universe is not a collection of objects. It is a symphony of events. To look deeply into anicca is to begin to hear this music and to learn how to dance with it, rather than stand rigidly in its way. Let us first turn this lens of impermanence outward, upon the world we perceive. The mountains that seem to be symbols of eternity are, in fact, being constantly worn down by wind and rain, pushed up by tectonic forces, in a geological dance that spans millions of years. The river you see today is not the same river you saw yesterday. Its water has traveled, its banks have shifted. The mighty oak tree in the field is in a constant, silent process of drawing nutrients from the soil and energy from the sun, growing, shedding its leaves, and moving slowly towards its eventual decay. Our cities rise and fall, civilizations flourish, and then crumble into dust. The very stars in the night sky are burning through their fuel, destined for an eventual end. Nothing, absolutely nothing, in the external world is static. It is all a shimmering, dynamic, ceaseless flow. Now, let us turn this powerful lens inward, upon the vessel we call our body. We tend to think of our body as a stable entity, a me that persists through time. But modern science affirms the ancient wisdom of anicca. Your body is a flowing river of processes. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced every single second. The air you breathe in is not the air you breathe out. The food you eat is transformed into energy and substance, becoming part of you for a time, before being expelled. It is said that over a period of about 7 years, nearly every atom in your body is replaced. The body you have today is not the same physical object it was a decade ago, or even a year ago. It is a pattern, a process, a continuous event. It is born, it grows, it matures, it sickens, it ages, and it will die. This is not a morbid thought. It is a simple, observable fact. The body is a clear and present teacher of anicca, if we only have the courage to look. Even more fleeting and fluid is the world of our minds. Consider your emotions. A wave of anger can arise, powerful and all-consuming, making your heart race and your face flush. It feels so solid, so real. Yet, where is that anger an hour later? It has vanished, replaced perhaps by sadness, or contentment, or boredom. A moment of profound joy can light up your entire being, and then, it too, subsides. Our emotional life is like the weather constantly changing, with storms, sunshine, and clouds passing through the sky of our awareness. And what of our thoughts? They are even more ephemeral. Sit quietly for just 1 minute and try to hold on to a single thought. It is nearly impossible. Thoughts flicker and dance like sparks from a fire, one giving rise to the next in an endless, often chaotic, stream. Hopes, fears, memories, plans, judgments, they arise and cease, moment by moment. Our inner world, which we so often believe to be a solid, defining me, is in fact the most vivid demonstration of the principle of anicca. It is a ceaseless river of sensation and cognition. If everything is in this constant state of flux, where then does our suffering arise? It arises from our resistance. The core of dukkha, especially the subtle pain of change and the background hum of conditioned existence, is a direct result of our fight against the reality of anicca. We try to build a dam in the middle of the river. We fall in love, and we want that feeling of romantic bliss to last forever, unchanged. We achieve a success, and we want to cling to that feeling of accomplishment, building our identity around it. We experience a moment of peace, and we grasp at it, fearing its departure. On the other side, We experience a painful emotion or a difficult situation, and we resist it, pushing it away, desperate for it to end. This constant pushing and pulling, this grasping and resisting, is utterly exhausting. It is a war against the fundamental nature of reality, a war we are destined to lose. The wisdom of Anika teaches us to stop fighting. It invites us to open our hand. The source of our suffering is not the flow of the river, but our desperate attempt to stop it. Peace is found not in building a dam, but in learning how to swim. This may sound like a recipe for resignation, but it is the exact opposite. Embracing Anika is profoundly liberating, for it is also the law of opportunity and renewal. Because things are impermanent, change for the better is always possible. A state of depression is not a life sentence. It is a temporary weather pattern of the mind. A difficult relationship can evolve. A painful situation will, in time, pass. We are never truly stuck. Each moment, each breath is a new beginning, a chance to start again. Impermanence is the basis of forgiveness. The person you were yesterday, the one who made a mistake, is gone. That collection of thoughts, feelings, and conditions has dissolved. You are not bound by your past forever. This allows for a radical self-forgiveness. It also allows us to forgive others, recognizing that they too are not static beings, but ever-changing processes. Furthermore, impermanence is what makes life precious. If a beautiful rose were to last forever, would we truly appreciate its fragile beauty? Knowing that it will soon wilt and decay prompts us to be fully present with it, to appreciate its color and fragrance in this unique, unrepeatable moment. The same is true for every experience, every relationship, every day of our lives. Anika is an invitation to show up fully for our lives, because this moment, exactly as it is, will never come again. There is a timeless story that illustrates this truth with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gotami had a single infant son, whom she loved more than life itself. One day, the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to believe her son was gone. She clutched his small body to her chest and went from house to house, desperately seeking medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man told her to go see the Buddha. She went to him, laid her son at his feet, and told her story. The Buddha listened with immense compassion. He did not lecture her on acceptance. Instead, he told her, "There is one thing that may help. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a parent, a husband, or a friend." Hopeful, Kisa Gotami went on her quest. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course I can give you a mustard seed." But when Gotami asked if death had ever visited the home, the woman's face fell. "The living are few," she said, "but the dead are many. I lost my husband last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had a story of loss. Every heart had been touched by the hand of death. As she went from door to door, a profound realization began to dawn in her heart. She was not alone in her grief. Her pain was not a unique curse. It was the shared, universal condition of all beings. The acceptance of impermanence came to her not as a harsh intellectual lesson, but as a wave of boundless compassion for herself and for all of humanity. She understood. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a quiet, peaceful heart. We can practice this contemplation in our own lives, most simply with our own breath. Each breath is a miniature life. It arises, it sustains for a moment, and it passes away. The in-breath is born, the out-breath dies. It is a direct, tangible experience of Anika, available to us in every moment. By simply paying attention to this rhythm, we are training our minds to see the nature of reality. We have seen the river of the world, the river of the body, the river of the mind. We have learned to find a strange beauty in its ceaseless flow, but a persistent question remains. Who or what is this observer standing on the riverbank? This eye who watches the thoughts, feels the emotions, and experiences the body. Is this watcher itself a solid rock, immune to the current, or is the observer also part of the river? We have journeyed along the unceasing river of impermanence, watching as the world, our bodies, and our minds flow in a constant state of flux. This led us to a vital question. Who is the one watching this flow? This inquiry brings us to the very heart of the Buddhist teaching, to an insight so radical and profound that it has the power to dismantle the very foundation of our suffering. This is the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self. Before we proceed, it is crucial to approach this idea with gentleness and curiosity, not with fear. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It does not mean that you are nothing. You are reading these words. You are breathing. You are alive. Rather, anatta suggests that you do not exist as a permanent, separate, independent entity. A little king sitting on a throne inside your skull, directing the show. It is an invitation to see that what we call ourself is not a solid thing, but a beautiful, dynamic process. It is like investigating a house, searching for its single, unchanging owner. We will find the house is full of life, full of activity, cooking, cleaning, conversation. But there is no solitary inhabitant to be found. The life of the house is its reality. To understand this, the Buddha invites us to become investigators, to conduct a systematic search for this self we feel so certain of. He broke down our human experience into 5 categories, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. He asks us to look in each of these categories to see if a permanent self can be located. First, we look in the aggregate of form, or rupa. This is our physical body. Is the I in your body? We have already seen through the lens of anicca that the body is a constantly changing river of processes. Your skin, your bones, your organs are all in flux. If you cut your hair, are you less you? If you lose a tooth, has a piece of your essential self been lost? If the body were the self, it would mean that with every passing moment, with every cell that dies and is born, the self is changing. A changing self is not a permanent self. So, we must conclude that while we have a body, we are not our body. The self is not found here. Second, we investigate feeling, or vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise from contact. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Is the self to be found in our feelings? Think about the nature of feelings. They are as fleeting as the weather. One moment, a feeling of joy arises. The next, it is replaced by boredom. Then, a pang of sadness. If you were your feelings, yourself would be dying and reborn countless times a day. You would be a joyful self one moment and a sad self the next. This is not the stable, continuous self we believe ourselves to be. Feelings are events that happen within our awareness. They are not the awareness itself. So, we are not our feelings. The self is not found here. Third, we look at perception, or sana. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels our experience. It is the part of the mind that says blue, tree, car, danger. Are you your perceptions? Like feelings, perceptions are dependent on conditions and are constantly changing. Your perception of a tree depends on your eyes, the quality of light, your distance from it, and your past experiences with trees. Perception is a process of interpretation, not a static entity. So, we are not our perceptions. The self is not found here. Fourth, we come to a crucial category: mental formations, or sankhara. This is a broad category that includes all our volitional activities, our thoughts, beliefs, opinions, biases, habits, desires, and intentions. This is where most of us locate our sense of self. I am my thoughts, we might say, or I am my personality. But let's look closely. Are your thoughts permanent? They flicker in and out of existence. Are your beliefs unchanging? You have likely changed your mind about many things in your life. Your personality itself evolves with time and experience. These mental formations are all conditioned. They are learned responses and patterns of activity. They are what the mind does, not what the mind fundamentally is. They are more like the software running on a computer than the computer itself. So, we are not our mental formations. The self is not found here. Finally, we investigate the fifth aggregate, consciousness, or vijnana. This is the faculty of knowing, the basic awareness of the other aggregates. Surely, this must be the self, this knowing presence that witnesses everything else. Yet the Buddha explains that consciousness is also conditioned. It does not exist on its own. It always arises in relation to an object. There is eye consciousness, which arises when the eye and a visible form come together. There is ear consciousness, which arises with the ear and a sound. There is mind consciousness, which arises with the mind and a thought. Consciousness is not a monolithic spotlight shining from a fixed source. It is more like a series of sparks that flare up wherever the conditions for knowing are present. It is an activity, a process of knowing, not a static, independent knower. So, even in consciousness, we cannot locate a permanent, unchanging self. After this exhaustive search, we are left with a startling conclusion. We have looked through the entire house of our experience, and the permanent inhabitant is nowhere to be found. What we call the self is not an entity, but an event. It is a dynamic, interdependent process of these five aggregates flowing together, a process so intricate and fast that it creates the powerful illusion of a solid, continuous identity. The mind, in its desire to make sense of this ceaseless flow of experience, creates a narrative. It connects memories, feelings, and thoughts into a story, with a central character called me. This story is a useful convention. It allows us to function in the world. But we make a crucial mistake. We fall in love with the story, and we believe we are the main character. The teaching of anatta is simply pointing out that we are the entire story, the entire process, not just the protagonist. We are like a wave in the ocean. The wave has a distinct shape and identity for a time. It rises, it crests, it crashes, but it is never, for a single moment, separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, expressing itself in the form of a wave. Why is this insight so liberating? Because when we believe in a solid, separate fortress-like I, we are condemned to a life of defending it. This is the deepest root of our dukkha. The belief in a separate self is the source of fear. We are terrified of this I being harmed, insulted, or ultimately annihilated at death. It is the source of greed and craving. We constantly try to bolster this fragile I with possessions, status, and praise. It is the source of envy and jealousy. We feel diminished when another I seems to have more. And it is the source of all conflict. My I and its beliefs against your I and your beliefs. The illusion of a separate self is the engine of division. There is a classic Zen story that beautifully illustrates this point. A man was in his boat, rowing across a misty lake. In the stillness of the morning, another boat suddenly crashed into his. He was filled with rage. He stood up and began shouting curses at the person in the other boat, furious at their carelessness. As he prepared to unleash another torrent of abuse, the mist cleared, and he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply broken free from its moorings and drifted into him. In that instant, all his anger vanished completely. It evaporated. There was no one to be angry at. The collision was just an event. The anger was not caused by the event itself, but by his assumption of a blameworthy other who had wronged his precious me. When the other was revealed to be a phantom, the anger had no ground to stand on. Anatta invites us to see that in so many of life's collisions, the other boat is empty. Our reactivity is so often based on this mistaken assumption of a solid me being attacked by a solid you. Letting go of this rigid, fictitious self is not a loss. It is the ultimate freedom. It is the walls of the prison dissolving. When the hard boundary between me and you begins to soften, the world changes. Empathy and compassion arise naturally. Your suffering is no longer completely separate from my suffering. Your joy is no longer a threat to my joy. We begin to see ourselves in others, and others in ourselves. We move from a state of defensive separation to one of open, interconnected being. This deep seeing, this trilogy of insight into unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and no self-dukkha, anicca, and anattes, not the end of the journey. It is the foundation. It is the clear and honest diagnosis of our condition. Now that we have looked squarely at the nature of our predicament, the great physician, the Buddha, offers us the prescription. He lays out a practical, step-by-step path for healing. This path begins with the courageous and formal acknowledgement of these truths. Having journeyed through the profound insights of unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and no-self, we arrive now at a clearing. We have explored the landscape of our predicament. We have seen the nature of the forest we are in, but a description, no matter how accurate, is not a map out. The Buddha, in his immense wisdom, did not stop at a diagnosis. He provided a clear, practical, and systematic guide for liberation. This guide is the very heart of his teaching, known as the Four Noble Truths. To encounter these truths is like being lost in a vast, tangled wilderness and suddenly discovering a map. The map does not magically transport you out of the forest, but it shows you exactly where you are, where the dangers lie, and the precise path that leads to safety. This framework is structured with the elegant logic of a medical diagnosis. The first truth identifies the symptom. The second identifies the cause of the symptom. The third offers a prognosis, the possibility of a cure. And the fourth prescribes the medicine. Today, we will walk through the first two of these truths, laying the foundation for our path out of the forest. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. We have already explored this concept as unsatisfactoriness, but here it is elevated to its proper place as the foundational, noble acknowledgement of our starting point. The word noble is key. To look at our own suffering and the suffering inherent in life is not an act of weakness, negativity, or complaint. It is an act of supreme courage. It is noble because it is the opposite of denial. It is the willingness to be utterly honest about the human condition without turning away, without sugarcoating reality. It is turning on the lights in a dark room. The first sight might be of dust and disarray, which might be unsettling, but for the first time, we can actually see what we are dealing with. We can begin to clean. This first truth asks us to courageously acknowledge the three layers of dukkha we have seen: the obvious pain of sickness, loss, and death, the subtle pain that comes from the changing, impermanent nature of our joys, and the pervasive, background hum of anxiety that comes from our conditioned, unstable existence. To accept this truth is to stop running from life. It is to stand our ground, to look our experience squarely in the eye, and to say, "This is what is here." This unflinching honesty is the bedrock upon which all genuine wisdom is built. You cannot heal a wound that you pretend does not exist. The second noble truth follows with impeccable logic. Once the symptom has been identified, the physician must find the cause. The second noble truth is the truth of the origin of dukkha, or samudaya. The Buddha states that the root cause of our deep unsatisfactoriness is a powerful force within our own minds, tanha. This Pali word translates as thirst, craving, or feverish desire. This is not the gentle wish for our own or others' well-being. This is a deep, instinctual, and relentless thirst. It is the itch that only gets worse with scratching. It is the feeling of being fundamentally incomplete, and the desperate, constant search for something outside of ourselves to fill the void, to make us feel whole and secure. This thirst, this tanha, is born directly from the ignorance of the truths we have just explored. Because we do not deeply understand impermanence, anicca, we crave for things and states to be permanent. Because we do not deeply understand no self, anatta, we believe there is a solid, separate me that needs to be protected, gratified, and aggrandized. This combination of a grasping mind in a world of fleeting phenomena is the perfect recipe for suffering. We are constantly thirsting for that which can never truly quench us. To make this practical, the Buddha identified three distinct phases of this powerful thirst. The first is the most familiar, the craving for sense pleasures, or kamatana. This is the thirst for our senses to be bathed in pleasant experiences. It is the craving for delicious tastes, for beautiful sights, for melodious sounds, for pleasant textures, for praise and pleasant ideas. In our modern world, this is the driving force of consumer culture. It is the endless scroll through social media, craving the small dopamine hit of a like. It is the belief that the next gadget, the next piece of clothing, the next vacation, or the next romantic partner will finally deliver lasting happiness. It is the constant pursuit of entertainment and distraction to avoid any hint of boredom or discomfort. This thirst is insatiable because its objects are impermanent. The pleasure of a good meal ends, the novelty of a new car wears off, and we are left thirsty once again, seeking the next fix. The second form of thirst is more subtle and profound, the craving for existence and becoming, or bhavatanha. This is not just the desire for pleasant things. It is the deep craving for ourself to persist, to grow, to be somebody. It is the engine of ambition, the thirst for fame, status, power, and legacy. It is the desperate need to carve our name into the world, to create a solid, enduring identity that will defy the reality of anicca. This is the craving that fuels the fear of insignificance. We believe that if we can just become important enough, successful enough, or loved enough, we can solidify the fluid process of our being into a permanent monument. We are trying to turn the wave of our life into a statue of ice, forgetting that we are in a warm ocean. This craving for becoming is a direct struggle against the truth of anatta, and as such, it is a guaranteed source of stress, anxiety, and eventual disappointment. The third form of thirst may seem paradoxical, the craving for non-existence or vibhavatanya. This is the desire to annihilate what is unpleasant. It is the voice in our head that screams, "I can't stand this feeling," when we experience pain, anxiety, or shame. It is the powerful urge to push away, to escape, to numb ourselves. This craving manifests as avoidance and escapism. We might turn to alcohol, drugs, or endless distraction to flee from a painful reality. In its most extreme form, it is the desire for self-destruction, not as a calm acceptance of the end of a process, but as a violent rejection of present moment suffering. This too is a form of thirst. It is the craving for a different reality, a reality free from this specific pain. It is just as feverish and just as much a source of suffering as the other two forms of craving. To illustrate how this craving traps us, there is a simple and powerful parable. In India, hunters devised a clever trap for monkeys. They would take a coconut, make a small hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide in, and place some rice inside. They would then chain the coconut to a tree. A monkey, driven by its craving, would come along, smell the rice, and slip its hand inside to grasp the prize. But once it made a fist around the rice, its hand was now too large to pull out of the hole. The monkey is now trapped. It will shriek and pull and struggle, but it will not be free. All it has to do to escape is to open its hand and let go of the rice. But its tanha, its craving, is so overpowering that it refuses to let go. It is trapped not by the coconut, but by its own clinging fist. We are that monkey. The rice is the fleeting pleasure, the identity, the object of our craving. The trap is our suffering, and freedom is always available in the simple yet profound act of letting go. These first two truths, taken together, are not a message of despair. They are a message of extraordinary hope. They tell us that our suffering is not random. It is not a curse. It is not a punishment. It has a specific, identifiable cause, our own inner thirst, our own clinging fist. And if our suffering has a cause, then it means that if we can remove the cause, we can end the suffering. This is the most empowering realization possible. Our freedom is in our own hands. This logically and powerfully raises the next question. Is it truly possible to extinguish this thirst? Is there a state of being that is free from this feverish craving? The hopeful prognosis of the great physician is a resounding yes. And this brings us to the promise of the third noble truth. Having journeyed into the heart of our human predicament, having looked unflinchingly at the nature of our unsatisfactoriness, our dukkha, and its root cause, the feverish thirst of tanha, we might feel a certain weight. To see the cage and to understand the mechanism of the lock is a profound step, but it is not a joyful one in itself. It is at this precise point, in this moment of stark clarity, that the Buddha's teaching pivots from a diagnosis of despair to a proclamation of radical, earth-shattering hope. It is here that we encounter the third and fourth noble truths, the brilliant light at the end of the tunnel, the discovery that not only is there a cure for our disease, but there is a clear, well-trodden path that leads directly to it. This is the turning point where the prisoner realizes that a key has been slipped under the door and a map showing the way to freedom has been laid at their feet. The third noble truth is the truth of the cessation of dukkha, known as nirodha. If the first truth is the symptom and the second is the cause, the third is the prognosis, and it is a prognosis of perfect health. Nirodha declares, with unshakable certainty, that the complete cessation of suffering is possible. This is perhaps the most hopeful and profound statement in all of spiritual inquiry. It asserts that our condition is not terminal. The cage is not sealed forever. The fire of suffering can be put out. The state that is realized when the fires are quenched is called nibbana, a word that has been shrouded in mystery and misconception. Its literal meaning is to extinguish or to blow out. This imagery is deeply significant. What, precisely, is being extinguished? It is not our life. It is not our personality. It is not our consciousness. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all our suffering: the fire of greed, the fire of hatred, and the fire of delusion. These are the very fires fanned into a blaze by the winds of tanha, or craving. When these fires are put out, what remains is not a cold, empty void, but an unshakable peace, a supreme security, a profound and luminous tranquility. We must be careful to clear away the Western, often sentimental ideas of nirvana as a kind of blissful, cloud-filled heaven that one goes to after death. Nibbana is not a place. It is a psychological reality, a state of mind that can be experienced in this very life, in this very world. The Buddha and his enlightened disciples lived in the same world as everyone else. They felt the heat of the sun, the sting of a mosquito, the pangs of hunger, but they were free from the inner turmoil, the mental anguish, the second arrow of reactivity. To describe nibbana is notoriously difficult, as it is a state beyond the ordinary concepts of our conditioned minds. It is often described in terms of what it is not. It is the unborn, the uncreated, the unconditioned. It is the end of craving, the absence of suffering, the unbinding from the endless cycle of birth and death. But it is also described in deeply positive, though subtle, terms. It is the highest bliss, not the fleeting, excitable happiness of sense pleasures, but a deep, abiding serenity. It is a state of perfect mental health, of supreme freedom, of seeing things with pristine, unobstructed clarity. It is the mind resting in its own true nature, unburdened, unagitated, and utterly at peace. To further clarify this attainable reality, the tradition speaks of two types of nibbana. The first is called sopadisesa nibbana, which means nibbana with a remainder. This is the liberation experienced by an enlightened being, an arahant, while they are still alive. The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion have been completely extinguished in their heart. They no longer create any new karma that would lead to future suffering. However, they still possess a body and a mind, the remainder or the result of their past karma. They can still experience physical pain, the first arrow, but they no longer generate any mental suffering, any anxiety, or any fear in response to it. They do not fire the second arrow. Imagine an old electric fan that has been running for a long time. When you turn off the power, the motor stops, but the blades continue to spin for a while due to their accumulated momentum. The enlightened person has turned off the power of craving, but the blades of their past karma continue to spin until the end of their natural life. The second type is parinibbana or anupadisesa nibbana, meaning nibbana without remainder. This is what occurs at the moment of death of an enlightened being. Since the fires have been put out and no new karmic fuel is being added, and the old karma has completely exhausted its momentum, the process of the five aggregates form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness comes to a final end. It dissolves without ever coming together again in a new life. This is the complete and utter cessation of the cycle of suffering. What this state is like is considered a profound mystery, beyond all concepts of existence or non-existence. It is simply the final, unshakable peace, the ultimate release, the promise of nibbana, first as a living reality and then as a final release, is the brilliant light that illuminates the entire path. It assures us that our efforts are not in vain, that a state of true and lasting freedom is not a mere fantasy, but the very purpose of our human birth. Now, imagine a person who has been wandering for days, completely lost in a vast and menacing jungle. The thorns have torn their clothes, hunger gnaws at their belly, and the terrifying sounds of the night have filled them with despair. They have given up all hope of ever finding their way out. They believe they are destined to perish in this wilderness. They stumble and fall, ready to surrender to their fate. As they lie on the ground, their hand touches something hard and cool beneath the damp leaves. Brushing away the dirt and vines, they uncover a single, ancient, moss-covered paving stone. With a surge of energy, they uncover another and another. It is a path. It is overgrown, ancient, and clearly has not been used for a very long time. But it is undeniably a path, leading purposefully through the jungle. In that moment, a feeling washes over them that is more powerful than joy. It is the feeling of hope. The despair vanishes like a morning mist. They are not out of the forest yet, but they know now that there is a way out. They have a direction. The struggle is no longer a meaningless wandering. It is now a purposeful journey. The very existence of the path has changed everything. This is the feeling that arises with the fourth noble truth. The fourth noble truth is the truth of the path that leads to the cessation of dukkha, known as magga. This is the medicine. This is the practical, detailed prescription for curing our disease. This path is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is called eightfold because it is comprised of 8 interconnected factors that, when cultivated together, lead the practitioner from the darkness of ignorance to the light of liberation. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder where you must perfect one before moving to the next. They are more like the 8 strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand lends its strength to the others, and the entire rope is far stronger than the sum of its parts. They are to be developed simultaneously, working together in a synergistic way to transform our entire being or understanding, our intentions, our actions, and our minds. This is a holistic path, a complete way of life. To make it more comprehensible, these 8 factors are often grouped into 3 divisions, which form the great pillars of Buddhist training. These are the division of wisdom, panya, the division of ethical conduct, sila, and the division of mental discipline, samadhi. The first division, wisdom or panya, is the foundation. It is about seeing things clearly as they really are. It is the compass for our journey, ensuring we are headed in the right direction. This division contains 2 path factors. The first is right view, sometimes called right understanding. This is nothing less than the direct, experiential understanding of the 4 noble truths themselves. It is seeing for oneself the reality of dukkha, its cause in tanha, its possible cessation in nibbana, and the path that leads there. It is the deep, cellular understanding of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Right view is the correct map that prevents us from wandering further into the wilderness. The second factor is right intention, also called right thought. Once we have the correct view, we must align our hearts with it. This involves cultivating 3 wholesome intentions. The intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go of our clinging and attachments. The intention of goodwill, which is the active cultivation of loving kindness towards all beings. And the intention of harmlessness, which is the development of compassion, the desire that all beings be free from suffering. Right intention is the decision to follow the direction the compass is pointing. The second division is ethical conduct or sila. This is about how we conduct ourselves in the world, how we engage with others through our words and actions. Sila creates a peaceful and harmonious life, which in turn creates a calm and stable mind, making it easier to develop wisdom and concentration. Without this ethical foundation, our minds would be too agitated by guilt, remorse, and conflict to make any deep spiritual progress. This division contains 3 path factors. The first is right speech. This means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against one another, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that pollutes the mind with triviality. It means cultivating speech that is truthful, kind, helpful, and spoken at the right time. The second is right action. This involves refraining from actions that cause harm. Specifically, it means abstaining from killing any living being, from taking what is not freely given, and from sexual misconduct or exploitation. It is the embodiment of our compassion in our physical deeds. The third is right livelihood. This means earning a living in a profession that does not bring harm to oneself or to others. The tradition explicitly mentions avoiding livelihoods based on trading weapons, living beings for slaughter, poisons, intoxicants, or engaging in deceitful practices. It is about ensuring that the way we sustain our life is in harmony with our spiritual values. The third and final division is mental discipline or samadhi. This is the direct training of the mind, transforming it from a wild, unruly force into a powerful, precise, and obedient instrument for liberation. This division contains the final three path factors. The first is right effort. This is the energetic and joyful engagement in our own mental cultivation. It has four aspects: the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states from arising, the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and perfect the wholesome states that are already present. It is the engine of the path. The second is right mindfulness. This is the heart of the meditative practice. It is the capacity to maintain a clear, non-judgmental, moment-to-moment awareness of what is happening as it is happening. We practice mindfulness of the body, of feelings, of the state of our mind, and of the very contents of the mind. Right mindfulness is learning to watch the river of our experience without being swept away by it. The final factor is right concentration. As mindfulness calms the mind, we develop the ability to focus our attention, to unify the mind on a single object. This leads to deep states of meditative absorption, known as jhana, where the mind becomes incredibly still, clear, and powerful. This concentrated mind is like a sharpened tool or a focused laser beam, capable of penetrating the deepest layers of reality and uprooting the final vestiges of ignorance. So we see the beautiful, complete, and elegant system of the Four Noble Truths. There is the problem, the diagnosis of dukkha. There is the cause, the etiology of tanha. There is the prognosis, the hopeful possibility of a cure in nirodha. And there is the medicine, the detailed prescription of the Noble Eightfold Path. The journey out of the forest is no longer a blind and desperate scramble. We have the map, we have the destination clearly in sight, and we have the eight-stranded path to carry us there. We stand now at the trailhead, the map of the Eightfold Path unfolded before us. The journey ahead requires courage, patience, and a gentle heart. It does not begin with a giant leap, but with the very first step. We begin where all true understanding must begin, with our own view, our own perspective. We begin by learning to see. We stand now at the beginning of the path, the map of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path unfolded before us. This path is our guide out of the wilderness of suffering. It has 8 interwoven strands, but there is one that is called the forerunner, the one that guides all the others. This is the first factor, right view. If the Eightfold Path is a chariot that will carry us to liberation, then right view consists of the 2 lead horses, guiding the entire vehicle. If it is a journey, right view is our compass and our map. Without it, our efforts could be misplaced, our energy wasted, and our journey, no matter how sincere, could lead us further astray. It is the foundational clarity that illuminates the way forward. The word right here does not imply a moral judgment, as if other views are wrong in a sinful sense. It simply means correct, skillful, in accordance with reality. Right view is the practice of learning to see things, not as we wish they were, or as we fear they might be, or as we have been told they are, but as they truly are. It is absolutely essential to understand what right view is not. It is not a demand for blind faith. It is not the adoption of a new set of religious dogmas or beliefs to be accepted without question. The Buddha was not interested in followers who simply believed what he said. He was interested in creating explorers of consciousness who could see the truth for themselves. This is a crucial distinction between belief and understanding. Belief is accepting a statement as true based on an external authority, a book, a teacher, a tradition. It is a second-hand truth. Understanding, particularly the deep understanding of right view, is a first-hand realization. It is seeing the truth directly in the laboratory of your own experience. The Buddha famously encouraged a spirit of free inquiry. He invited everyone to be a spiritual scientist, to take his teachings as a working hypothesis, and to test them rigorously against their own lived reality. The spirit is one of ihipasiko, a Pali word that means come and see for yourself. Therefore, right view begins, perhaps, as a form of confidence or intellectual acceptance. We accept the map because it seems plausible and comes from a trustworthy source. But it only becomes true right view when it is penetrated and verified by our own insight through the practice of mindfulness and meditation. So, what is the content of this correct map? What does one with right view actually see? The tradition describes two levels of right view. The first is what we might call mundane right view. This is the understanding of the law of karma, or more accurately, karma. This is the basic conviction that our actions have consequences. It is the understanding that actions rooted in generosity, kindness, and wisdom lead to happiness and pleasant results for ourselves and others. And conversely, that actions rooted in greed, hatred, and ignorance lead to suffering and painful results. This level of right view provides the essential ethical framework for our lives. It gives us a compelling, rational reason to cultivate wholesome behavior and to abandon unwholesome behavior. It is the understanding that we are the architects of our own destiny. Every thought, word, and deed is a seed we are planting, and we will inevitably experience its fruit. Without this foundational understanding, the motivation for ethical conduct is weak, and without ethical conduct, the mind is too turbulent for the deeper work of meditation. The second, deeper level is supramundane right view. This is the ultimate goal, the penetrating insight into the fundamental nature of existence. This is seeing, not just believing in, the truths we have spent our time exploring. It is the direct, unshakable realization of the Four Noble Truths. It is seeing for oneself that there is dukkha, that it is caused by tanha, that its cessation is possible, and that the Eightfold Path is the way to that cessation. It is the experiential understanding of the three characteristics of existence in every moment of life. It is seeing anicca, impermanence, in the arising and passing of every thought, every sensation. It is seeing dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, in the inherent instability of all conditioned things. And it is seeing anatta, no self, in the empty, process nature of what we call ourself. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a profound shift in perception, where the very operating system of the mind is rewritten from one of ignorance to one of wisdom. To fully grasp the importance of right view, it is helpful to consider its opposite, wrong view. Wrong view is the root of all dukkha. It is the faulty map that leads us directly into the swamp. The most fundamental wrong views are the belief in a permanent, unchanging, separate self or soul, the belief that conditioned things can bring lasting happiness, and the belief that our actions have no moral consequences. If I operate from the wrong view of a permanent self, my life will be a constant struggle of defending this self, of promoting its interests, of fearing its annihilation. It will be a life of me against the world, which is a recipe for fear, anxiety, conflict, and loneliness. If I operate from the wrong view that happiness can be found in acquiring wealth, status, or sense pleasures, my life will be an endless, exhausting chase on the hamster wheel, a cycle of brief highs followed by inevitable disappointment. If I operate from the wrong view that my actions do not matter, I will act with heedlessness, causing harm to others, and poisoning my own mind with cruelty and carelessness. Wrong view is the very definition of being lost. There is a famous Indian parable that perfectly illustrates the difference between our ordinary, fragmented perception and the holistic clarity of right view. A king once gathered a group of men who had been blind from birth. He brought an elephant before them and asked each one to describe it. The first man reached out and touched the elephant's thick, sturdy leg. "I see," he said. "An elephant is like a great pillar." The second man grasped the elephant's tail. "No," he declared. "An elephant is like a rope with a frayed end." A third man touched the elephant's broad, smooth side. "You are both wrong," he insisted. "An elephant is like a solid wall." A fourth felt the swinging trunk and announced that an elephant was like a large snake. Another touched the ear and described it as a giant fan. Soon, the men were all arguing, each one absolutely convinced that their own limited, partial experience was the complete and total truth. The Buddha explained that this is how human beings are. We are blinded by our ignorance and our conditioning. We grasp one small part of reality, a fleeting thought, a pleasant feeling, a sense of our own identity, and we mistake it for the whole picture. We create our entire worldview based on this tiny, fragmented piece of data, and we argue with others who have grasped a different piece. Right view is the cure for this blindness. It is like having one sight miraculously restored. Suddenly, you can step back and see the entire elephant. You see the leg, the tail, the trunk, the ears, and the side, and you understand how they all connect, how they function together to form this magnificent creature. You see the whole, not just the parts. Right view is the ability to see the totality of existence, to understand the interconnectedness of all things, to perceive the laws of cause and effect that govern our lives. Finally, it is essential to remember that right view is not a static, one-time achievement. It is a process, a lens that we are continuously learning to look through. At the beginning, it is a conceptual understanding, a map we have been given. This initial, intellectual right view gives us the inspiration and the trust to begin walking the path. As we start to practice the other path, factors as we purify our ethical conduct and train our minds in meditation, our direct experience begins to confirm the truth of the map. We see for ourselves the fleeting nature of our thoughts. We feel for ourselves the suffering caused by clinging. This direct seeing then deepens and refines our view. It's a beautiful, positive feedback loop. The view guides the practice, and the practice clarifies the view. As this new clarity, this right view begins to dawn in the mind, it has an immediate and profound effect. Like changing the destination on a GPS, which instantly recalculates the entire route. Clarifying our view of reality naturally begins to reshape the deepest currents of our heart. It transforms our motivations, our aspirations, and our will. When we truly begin to see the nature of suffering and its cause, our desire to inflict suffering on ourselves or others begins to wither away. When we truly begin to see the interconnected, selfless nature of life, our hearts naturally incline towards kindness and compassion. This transformation of the heart, guided by the clarity of the eyes, leads us directly to the second strand of the path, the compass of the heart, right intention. If right view is the act of seeing, the clearing of our perception, so that our eyes can perceive the true landscape of reality, then right intention is the act of the heart. It is the conscious and courageous choice to align our will with what our wisdom now sees. A map, no matter how accurate, is useless if we do not choose to follow it. A compass, no matter how true, cannot guide a ship whose captain refuses to turn the rudder. Right intention, or Sama Sankappa in Pali, is the turning of that rudder. It is the moment we take the clarity of our sight and translate it into the energy of our heart, into a firm and gentle resolve. It is the process of asking ourselves, now that I am beginning to see the nature of suffering and its end, where do I choose to place my energy? What do I truly value? What direction will I orient my life towards? Right intention is the steering mechanism of the path, ensuring that the force of our will moves us towards liberation, not further into bondage. The power of intention is the absolute bedrock of Buddhist ethics. In the Buddhist teaching, an action is defined not merely by the external deed, but by the volition, the mental impulse, the cetana that gives rise to it. It is the why behind the what that truly matters. For it is the intention that colors the mind and plants the karmic seed. The same external act can be either wholesome or unwholesome, depending entirely on the motive that drives it. Imagine offering someone a gift. If the intention is one of pure generosity, a simple wish to bring another person happiness, the act is beautiful and wholesome. It purifies the mind of the giver and brings joy to the receiver. But imagine offering the exact same gift with the hidden intention of manipulating the person, of making them feel indebted to you so you can ask for a favor later. The external action is identical, but the inner energy is one of greed and deceit. The karmic imprint of this act is dark and unskillful. It pollutes the mind of the giver, even if the receiver is unaware. Our lives are a constant stream of such moments. The words we speak to our children, the way we perform our work, the thoughts we hold towards strangers all are preceded by a subtle intention. The practice of right intention is the practice of becoming a connoisseur of these subtle energies within our own heart, learning to recognize the flavor of our motivations before they manifest as words and deeds. It is the beginning of taking conscious control of the quality of our own mind. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, laid out 3 specific categories of right intention that we are to cultivate. These 3 are the direct antidotes to the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, and they stand in direct opposition to the 3 kinds of craving that cause our suffering. They are the new directions we point the compass of our heart towards. The first is the intention of renunciation, or Nekkhamma Sankappa. The word renunciation can sound harsh, suggesting a life of grim self-denial. But this is a misunderstanding. Renunciation, in this context, is better understood as the intention of letting go. It is the conscious turning away from the feverish grip of craving. Having seen through right view that chasing after sense pleasures and worldly gain is a source of endless dukkha, we make a gentle but firm resolve to release our clinging. It is the direct counteragent to the thirst for sense pleasures. It is the intention to choose simplicity over needless complexity, to choose contentment over constant striving, to find happiness in inner peace rather than in external acquisition. This is not a rejection of the world, but a rejection of our addiction to it. It is the profound relief you feel when you finally put down a heavy suitcase that you have been carrying for miles, a suitcase you didn't even realize was weighing you down. Cultivating the intention of renunciation creates a sense of inner spaciousness, freedom, and lightness. It is the heart's aspiration for true autonomy, free from the tyranny of its own desires. The second is the intention of goodwill, or abhyapada sankappa. This is the direct antidote to the poison of ill will, aversion, anger, and hatred. It is the conscious and deliberate cultivation of a mind of loving kindness, or metta. This is the sincere and unconditional wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception. This begins with ourselves. We cultivate an intention of friendliness and acceptance towards our own imperfections. From there, we extend it outwards, to our loved ones, to neutral people, and most challengingly and transformatively, to those we find difficult or have harmed us. The intention of goodwill is a radical commitment to meet the inevitable friction of life, the frustrations, the disappointments, the annoying habits of others, not with the harshness of anger, but with the softness of patience and understanding. It is the counter-agent to the craving for non-existence, the desire to annihilate what is unpleasant. Instead of pushing away the unpleasant, we intend to meet it with a warm and spacious heart. It is the resolve to be a source of peace in the world, rather than a source of conflict. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa sankappa. This is the intention of compassion, or karuna. While goodwill is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the tender and trembling wish for them to be free from suffering. It arises from the deep seeing of our shared condition of dukkha. When right view shows us that all beings, just like ourselves, are subject to pain, loss, and confusion, the heart naturally softens. The intention of harmlessness is the resolve to not add to the world's great ocean of suffering. It is a commitment to refrain from causing physical or mental harm to any living creature, from the smallest insect to the most challenging human being. This is not a passive stance. It is an active vigilance, a way of moving through the world with care and sensitivity. It asks us to consider the consequences of our actions, our consumption, and our words. It is the heart's promise to be a refuge, a safe harbor for all life. How then do we practice this in the messiness of our daily lives? It is a moment-to-moment practice of tending the garden of the heart. It begins with mindfulness. We learn to notice our intentions as they arise, before they have gathered momentum. A critical email lands in your inbox. What is the first impulse, the first intention? Is it to defend the ego? To attack in return? To indulge in self-pity? Mindfulness allows us to catch this initial reactive intention. In that precious pause, we practice right effort to abandon that unwholesome intention, and we consciously introduce a wholesome one. We can deliberately replace the intention to attack with an intention of goodwill. May this person be free from the anger that caused them to write this. May they find peace. We can introduce an intention of harmlessness. How can I respond to this situation in a way that de-escalates conflict and causes no further harm? We are gently, patiently weeding our own minds. We recognize the weed of ill will, and instead of watering it with our attention, we gently remove it and plant a flower of kindness in its place. Over time, with persistent cultivation, the garden of our mind becomes a place of beauty, fragrance, and peace. There is a simple story of two builders. Both men were engaged in the exact same task, cutting and shaping stones for the construction of a great cathedral. A visitor came to the site and asked the first builder, "What are you doing?" The man sighed, wiped the sweat from his brow, and grumbled, "I am cutting this cursed stone. My back aches, The sun is relentless, the pay is meager, and the foreman is a tyrant. I am just trying to get through the day. His intention was one of resentment, of bitterness, of just getting by. His work, and indeed his life, was a heavy burden. The visitor then moved to the second builder and asked him the same question. The second man looked up from his work, and his eyes were full of light. He smiled and said, "I am building a cathedral. I am creating a sacred space where, for 1,000 years, people will come to find solace and connect with the divine. It is a privilege to be a part of it." The external action was identical, the physical labor was the same, but the inner experience, dictated entirely by the intention, was worlds apart. The first man lived in a prison of his own making. The second lived in a state of grace, filled with purpose and joy. This is the transformative power of right intention. It can turn the most mundane task into a sacred act. Right view, then, provides the clarity of the map. But it is right intention that sets the direction of our heart's compass. It is the conscious choice to align our will with wisdom and love. It infuses our journey with meaning, turning the struggle of existence into a path of purpose. With our sight clarified by what is true, and our heart's compass now set toward what is beautiful and good, the inner world begins to fall into a state of profound alignment. The next natural step on this path is for this inner integrity to express itself outwardly, to shape how we engage with the world and with each other. This expression begins with the most common, powerful, and often most dangerous tool we possess, our voice. We now turn to the practice of right speech. With a mind that is beginning to see clearly through right view, and a heart whose course is set by the compass of right intention, we arrive at the first great expression of our practice in the world. This is the realm of sila, or ethical conduct, the foundation of a peaceful life and a tranquil mind. And the very first step into this realm is through the gate of our own mouth. The Buddha placed an extraordinary emphasis on the practice of right speech, or samavaka, because he understood that our words are one of the most powerful forces we wield. A single word can heal a lifetime of pain, or inflict a wound that never closes. The tongue is a creative force of immense potential. With it, we can build bridges of understanding or dig trenches of division. We can soothe a frightened heart or ignite the flames of conflict. Speech is the primary bridge between our inner world and the world of others. The practice of right speech is the conscious, mindful effort to ensure that what crosses that bridge is beneficial, truthful, and kind. It is the art of transforming our voice from an unconscious weapon of the ego into a deliberate instrument of wisdom and compassion. The framework for right speech is elegantly simple, consisting of 4 key principles to cultivate. These are not rigid commandments, but invitations to a deeper mindfulness of how we use this powerful faculty. The first principle is to abstain from falsehood. On the surface, this seems straightforward. Do not tell lies. But the practice goes much deeper than avoiding blatant untruths. It asks us to examine the subtle ways we distort reality to serve our own interests. This includes exaggeration to make our stories more impressive, or to make ourselves appear more important. It includes the telling of white lies for the sake of convenience, which slowly erodes the fabric of trust. It involves making promises we have no intention of keeping. It even includes a misleading silence, allowing someone to believe a falsehood when a simple word of truth could bring clarity. To live a life entangled in falsehoods, no matter how small, is exhausting. It creates a complex, fragile architecture of deceit that requires constant maintenance and ever more lies to prop it up. It severs our connection not only with others, who learn they cannot trust our words, but more tragically, with ourselves. We lose our own integrity, our own self-respect. In contrast, the cultivation of truthfulness brings a profound simplicity and peace. To be a person whose words align with reality is to be a person of immense integrity. It creates a mind that is clear and at ease, unburdened by the need to remember which story was told to whom. It means being reliable, trustworthy, and a source of clarity in a confusing world. The second principle is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the practice of refraining from using our words to create animosity and division between people. This includes classic backbiting, where we criticize someone behind their back, or carrying tales, where we report the harsh words of one person to another. It is the act of spreading rumors or gossip that damages another's reputation. We must look honestly at the motivation behind such speech. Often, it stems from jealousy, from a desire to elevate our own fragile ego by diminishing someone else. In the modern world, this form of wrong speech is rampant. It is the lifeblood of political polarization, where we caricature and demonize those on the other side, instead of seeking to understand them. It fuels online tribalism, where anonymous comments are used to sow discord and hatred. To engage in divisive speech is to actively poison the well of human community. The antidote is to consciously cultivate speech that unites and promotes harmony. This means making an effort to speak of the good qualities of others. It means refusing to participate in gossip, gently changing the subject when it arises. It means that when we hear of conflict, our intention is to find ways to reconcile, to build bridges, to help people see their common humanity. It is the resolve to be a peacemaker with our words. The third principle is to abstain from harsh speech. This includes all forms of verbal aggression, yelling, insulting, name-calling, cursing, belittling, and cruel sarcasm. It is any form of language whose intention is to cause pain, to humiliate, or to assert dominance over another. We often justify this kind of speech by saying we needed to vent or let off steam. But from a Buddhist perspective, this is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Venting our anger through harsh words does not relieve the anger. It strengthens the neural pathways of anger in our own mind, making it easier to become angry the next time. It is a rehearsal for more suffering, not a release from it. The impact on the listener is equally devastating. Harsh speech creates fear, it builds walls of resentment, and it makes genuine communication impossible. The positive practice is to cultivate speech that is gentle, kind, and affectionate. This does not mean we can never speak of difficult things, but it means we learn the skill of clothing, even a difficult truth, in words that are soft and compassionate, so that the other person can actually hear it without becoming defensive. It is learning to speak to others, even in disagreement, with the same tenderness we would use to soothe a frightened child. This requires immense patience and mindfulness, but it has the power to transform our most difficult relationships. The fourth and final principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is perhaps the most subtle, and for many of us, the most challenging aspect of right speech. Idle chatter is pointless talk, gossip, speculation, and verbal filler that serves no real purpose. It is speaking simply to hear our own voice, to fill an uncomfortable silence, or to engage in the endless analysis of trivialities. While it may seem harmless, the Buddha understood that idle chatter is a significant drain on our mental energy. It keeps the mind in a state of agitation, flitting from one unimportant topic to the next. It reinforces our attachment to the superficial and prevents the mind from settling into a state of calm and depth. The practice of restraining idle chatter leads us to a profound appreciation for its counterpart, noble silence. This is not the silence of sullenness or awkwardness. Noble silence is a rich, restful, and mindful state. It is the wisdom to know when words are unnecessary. It is the confidence to be present with another person without needing to fill every moment with noise. In this silence, we conserve our mental energy, we can listen more deeply, and we create the space for genuine insight to arise. Right speech, therefore, is as much about what we do not say as it is about what we do say. It also implies its corollary, right listening, the practice of offering our full, undivided, compassionate attention to another, which is one of the greatest gifts we can give. In our digital age, these principles are more relevant than ever. Our keyboard has become a new kind of tongue. A hastily written email, a sarcastic comment on a social media post, a shared piece of gossip in a group chat, these are all forms of speech, and they create real karma. The anonymity of the internet can often disinhibit our worst impulses, making it easy to engage in harsh, false, and divisive speech we would never use face to face. The practice of right speech asks us to bring the same level of mindfulness to our digital interactions as we would to a conversation in person. Our digital footprint is a permanent part of our life's imprint. There is an old story of a king who commanded his royal chef, "Go to the market and bring me back the best thing you can find." The chef returned with a tongue. He had it prepared by his finest cooks, and the king found it delicious. The next day, the king commanded the chef, "Now go to the market and bring me back the worst thing you can find." The chef returned, once again, with a tongue. The king was perplexed and asked for an explanation. The chef bowed and said, "Your Majesty, the tongue is the source of both the best and the worst in the world. With a good tongue, one can speak words of truth, praise, and inspiration. One can teach wisdom and create peace. It is the best of things. But with a bad tongue, one can tell lies, spread slander, speak with cruelty, and incite war. It is the worst of things. This is the power we hold every time we open our mouths. The practice of right speech is the ongoing training to use this power for the good. It is the external, audible expression of an inner state of clarity and kindness. It is the first great step in bringing our meditative practice off the cushion and into our relationships, creating a sphere of peace and integrity around us. Our words, powerful as they are deeply intertwined with our physical conduct. The integrity we cultivate in our speech must be matched by the integrity of our actions in the world. As we learn to speak from a place of harmlessness, we must also learn to act from that same foundation. This brings us to the next strand of the path, the practice of right action. As our inner world is brought into alignment through right view and right intention, and this alignment begins to find its voice through the practice of right speech, we now arrive at the embodiment of our practice. We turn our attention from our words to our deeds, from our tongue to our hands and feet. This is the practice of right action, or samakamanta, the third strand of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the second pillar of ethical conduct, or sila. If our words are the sound our life makes, our actions are the shape it takes, the physical imprint we leave upon the world with every passing day. Right action is the conscious and diligent practice of ensuring that this imprint is one of harmlessness, respect, and compassion. It is the profound recognition that our bodies are not merely vehicles for our own gratification, but instruments through which we can express our deepest values and contribute to the well-being of the world. The Buddha laid out the practice of right action through three fundamental principles, three areas of conduct to which we must bring our mindful attention. The first and most foundational of these is to abstain from the taking of life. This principle, at its core, is a commitment to refrain from intentionally killing any living being. It arises from the deep, empathetic understanding that all beings, from the most magnificent mammal to the smallest insect, share a fundamental desire to live and a fundamental aversion to pain and death. When we truly see this commonality, this shared vulnerability, the act of intentionally destroying a life becomes an offense against our own compassionate heart. This practice asks us to cultivate a reverence for life in all its forms, to recognize the intricate web of existence in which we are all participants. In our modern, interconnected world, this principle extends far beyond the direct act of killing. It invites us to contemplate the far-reaching consequences of our lifestyle. Our patterns of consumption, for instance, can contribute to the destruction of entire ecosystems, leading to the death of countless beings. Therefore, a modern practice of right action might include a commitment to environmental stewardship, reducing our consumption, recycling, and supporting efforts to protect our planet's fragile biodiversity. For many practitioners, this principle also leads to a deep reflection on diet. Recognizing the suffering involved in industrial animal agriculture, many choose to adopt a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle as a direct and powerful expression of their commitment to non-harming. This is not a rigid dogma, but a personal choice that flows naturally from a heart that has been sensitized to the suffering of others. The positive aspect of this principle is not just the passive refraining from harm, but the active cultivation of kindness towards all beings. It is the act of rescuing a trapped insect, caring for a sick animal, or supporting policies that protect the vulnerable. It is the practice of being a guardian of life, not a destroyer of it. The second principle of right action is to abstain from taking what is not given. At its simplest level, this means refraining from stealing the physical property of others. To take what does not belong to us is to violate the trust that holds society together. It is an act rooted in greed and a lack of respect for the efforts and well-being of others. But again, this principle has much broader and more subtle applications in our complex world. It extends to the realm of business ethics. A company that exploits its workers, pays them an unfair wage, or subjects them to unsafe conditions is taking their health and energy without just compensation. A business that uses deceptive advertising to sell a faulty product is stealing the trust and resources of its customers. In our digital age, this principle applies to intellectual property. To pirate software, music, or films without paying the creators is a form of taking what is not freely given. On a more personal level, we can even steal another person's time through our own heedlessness, or steal their attention by being absorbed in our phones while they are trying to connect with us. The true antidote to the mind of theft is the cultivation of its opposite, generosity, or dana. The practice of right action encourages us to delight in giving. This does not only mean giving money or material things. It means being generous with our time, our energy, our appreciation, and our full listening presence. It is the joy of contributing, of sharing, of knowing that we have added to the well-being of another without any expectation of reward. The third principle of right action is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a commitment to engage with our powerful sexual energy in a way that is founded on respect, kindness, and honesty, causing no harm to ourselves or to others. At its core, this means refraining from any sexual act that involves coercion, exploitation, or deceit. This includes adultery, which breaks the bonds of trust and causes immense pain to multiple people. It includes any form of sexual engagement that is not based on clear and enthusiastic mutual consent. It is about recognizing the inherent dignity and autonomy of all individuals and refusing to treat another person as a mere object for our own gratification. It is about ensuring that this intimate aspect of our lives is an expression of genuine connection and care, rather than a manifestation of greed, craving, or the desire to conquer. The positive cultivation here is one of deep respect within our relationships. It is the practice of fidelity, honesty, and open communication, where our sexuality becomes an expression of love and mutual honor, strengthening bonds rather than shattering them. It can sometimes feel that our past actions define us, that we are trapped by the mistakes we have made. The Buddha's teaching offers a message of radical possibility, that no one is beyond redemption. This is powerfully illustrated in the famous story of a man named Angulimala. He was a terrifying murderer who lived in the forests of Kosala, preying on travelers. His name literally meant finger necklace, because he wore a gruesome garland made from the fingers of his many victims. He was so feared that entire villages were abandoned. One day, the Buddha, against the advice of all, set out to walk calmly and alone through Angulimala's forest. Angulimala saw him and was delighted at such easy prey. He began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Although the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he yelled out, "Stop, contemplative, stop." The Buddha, still walking, turned and replied with a calm, clear voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was stunned. "What do you mean?" he asked. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from doing violence to living beings. I have laid down the rod and the sword, but you have no restraint towards life. That is why I have stopped, and you have not." The Buddha's complete fearlessness, his profound peace, and the sheer power of his compassion in that moment shattered something in Angulimala's mind. The weight of his horrific deeds crashed down upon him. He threw down his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. He was accepted into the monastic order, and through diligent practice, this former mass murderer completely purified his mind and became an enlightened arahant, a being free from all suffering. This story is a testament to the transformative power of the path. It teaches us that our past actions do not have to be our prison. Through the committed practice of right action, anyone, no matter their history, can change their trajectory and create a future of peace and harmlessness. Right action, therefore, is the practice of making our physical presence in the world a source of safety and well-being for others. It is the application of compassion to our every deed, from the smallest gesture to the largest life decision. Every action we take is a footprint we leave on the sands of time. The practice of right action is the conscious effort to ensure that these footprints lead away from harm and towards kindness, creating a life of deep integrity and unshakable inner peace. The actions we take day after day are often most concentrated in the sphere of our work. the way we spend the majority of our waking hours to sustain ourselves. How can we ensure that this significant portion of our life, our livelihood, is also in harmony with the path of compassion and wisdom? This vital question brings us to the next aspect of ethical conduct, the practice of right livelihood. Having established a foundation of ethical conduct through our words and our physical deeds, we now arrive at a part of the path that occupies the vast majority of our waking lives, our work. For many of us, our profession is the primary arena where our values are tested, where our stress arises, and where our time is consumed. There can be a deep and painful split between our spiritual aspirations and the demands of our job. We may feel we have a spiritual life on the meditation cushion, or in moments of quiet reflection, and then a separate, often compromised work life. The fifth strand of the Noble Eightfold Path, right livelihood or Samma Ajiva, is the Buddha's profound teaching on how to heal this split. It is the final pillar of the division of Sila, or ethical conduct, and it asserts that our work should not be a detour or an obstacle on our path to awakening, but can and should be an integral part of the journey itself. It is the practice of bringing our whole self, our integrity, our compassion, and our mindfulness into the marketplace, transforming our labor from a mere means of survival into a path of practice. The practice of right livelihood begins with an outer observance, a careful consideration of the nature of our work itself. The fundamental principle is simple and direct. One should earn a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or to others. This is a direct extension of the principles of right action into our professional lives. The Buddha, understanding the powerful influence of our work on our mind, specifically named 5 types of businesses that a practitioner should avoid because they are fundamentally based on causing harm. To engage in these livelihoods is to knowingly profit from the suffering of others, an act that deeply stains one's own mind and makes spiritual progress exceptionally difficult. The first of these is trading in weapons. This is perhaps the most obvious. To design, manufacture, or sell instruments whose sole purpose is to injure and kill is to directly participate in the machinery of violence. It is to profit from conflict, fear, and death. The karmic weight of such a profession is immense, as it directly contributes to the most extreme forms of suffering in the world. The second is trading in living beings. In the Buddha's time, this referred primarily to the slave trade and to the raising and selling of animals for slaughter. In essence, it is the business of commodifying life, of treating sentient beings as mere objects for profit. This principle directly confronts any profession based on exploitation, whether it be human trafficking in its modern forms or the industrial-scale breeding and killing of animals, which requires a systematic shutting down of one's natural empathy. The third prohibited trade is the business of meat. This is a specific application of the previous principle, focusing on professions like being a butcher or working in a slaughterhouse, where the daily work involves the direct act of killing. It recognizes that to make a living from ending the lives of other beings habituates the mind to violence and desensitizes the heart to the principle of non-harming. The fourth is trading in poisons. This refers to any business that profits from selling substances specifically designed to kill, such as the manufacturing of lethal chemicals or pesticides. In a modern context, we might expand this to include any business that knowingly produces and sells products that are toxic and profoundly damaging to the health of consumers or the environment, placing profit above the well-being of the community. The fifth and final prohibited trade is the business of intoxicants. This refers to profiting from the sale of substances like alcohol or addictive drugs that cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness. The danger here is twofold. Firstly, it encourages a lack of mindfulness in the consumer, which is the very opposite of what the path cultivates. Secondly, it is a business model that often preys upon and profits from the weakness and addiction of others, a form of commerce that thrives on the perpetuation of suffering. In our time, we might reflect on how this principle could apply to new forms of intoxicants, such as addictive technologies or gambling platforms that are meticulously designed to hijack human attention and create compulsive behavior for financial gain. This ancient list provides a clear and powerful ethical foundation. But for most of us living in a complex global economy, the lines are not always so clear. We may not be arms dealers, but what if our company has a government defense contract? We may not work in a slaughterhouse, But what if our pension fund invests in industrial agriculture? The practice of right livelihood in the modern world is not about finding a state of absolute purity, which is often impossible. It is about engaging in honest, deep, and continuous self-inquiry. The guiding question we must ask ourselves is, does my work, in its fundamental nature, depend upon and contribute to the harm, deception, or exploitation of living beings? This requires courage and honesty. It asks us to look at the supply chains, the investment portfolios, and the ultimate impact of the industry we are a part of. The goal is not to foster guilt or judgment towards ourselves or others, but to cultivate a wise discernment, a commitment to align our professional life as closely as we can with the principles of non-harming, and to make different choices when and where we are able. This outer observance is the foundation, but the heart of the practice of right livelihood, especially for those of us not in a position to easily change our careers, lies in transforming our inner experience of the work we already do. The Buddhist teaching is radical in its assertion that the quality of our mind is the ultimate determinant of our experience. It is possible to work in a right livelihood, like a non-profit organization, but to do so with a mind full of jealousy, ambition, and ego, thereby practicing wrong livelihood in your heart. Conversely, it is possible to have a very simple, mundane job and to transform it into a profound spiritual practice. The focus now shifts from the what of our work to the how. The first step in this transformation is to bring mindfulness to our work. The workplace, with its pressures and demands, becomes our meditation hall. We can practice mindfulness of the body by noticing our posture as we sit at a desk, feeling the contact of our feet on the floor, or paying attention to the physical sensations of repetitive tasks. This simple act of grounding in the body can be a powerful antidote to stress. We can practice mindfulness of feelings by observing the waves of emotion that arise during the day, the flicker of irritation at a colleague, the surge of anxiety before a presentation, the subtle pride in an accomplishment. By noticing these feelings as impersonal, conditioned phenomena, we learn not to be swept away by them. We can observe, frustration is present. Instead of being lost in the story of, I am so frustrated, we can also apply mindfulness directly to our tasks. Instead of succumbing to the modern plague of multitasking, which fragments our attention and increases stress, we can practice bringing our full, undivided attention to one thing at a time. Whether it is writing an email, listening to a customer, or analyzing a spreadsheet, to give it our complete presence is to transform it from a chore into a practice of concentration. Secondly, we can see our work as a relational practice. The workplace is a rich and often challenging laboratory for developing our compassion and patience. It is where our sila is truly put to the test. We can consciously practice right speech by refusing to engage in office gossip, by offering appreciation and praise sincerely, by learning to give and receive feedback with kindness, and by truly listening in meetings instead of just planning what we will say next. The workplace is a guaranteed opportunity to practice patience. Difficult colleagues, demanding clients, and frustrating setbacks are not obstacles to our practice. They are the practice. They are the abrasive surfaces that can polish the gemstone of our forbearance. We can also shift our perspective from one of competition to one of cooperation and generosity. Instead of asking, how can I get ahead? We can begin to ask, how can we as a team create something of value? This involves sharing our knowledge freely, helping a colleague who is struggling, and genuinely celebrating the successes of others, a practice known as mudita, or sympathetic joy, which is a powerful antidote to jealousy. Finally, we can elevate our work through the power of intention, reframing it as a practice of service. This involves looking past the immediate task and connecting with the ultimate purpose of our labor. A doctor is not just diagnosing diseases, she is serving health. A teacher is not just conveying information, he is serving wisdom in the next generation. An accountant is not just crunching numbers, she is serving financial order and stability. A sanitation worker is not just collecting trash, he is serving public health and cleanliness. This shift in intention can be applied to any job, no matter how humble it may seem to the outside world. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this perfectly. It speaks of a man who worked as a street sweeper, a job often looked down upon. But this man was a practitioner of mindfulness. When asked what he did, he didn't say, "I sweep trash." He said, "I practice bringing beauty and order to a small corner of the world." He was not engaged in a battle against the dirt. He was engaged in a mindful, meditative dance with his broom. Each sweep was a conscious act, a gesture of care. He felt no resentment or bitterness in his work, because his inner intention had transformed it from a demeaning chore into a noble calling. He was practicing right livelihood in its deepest sense. He was at peace, not because his job was prestigious, but because his heart was pure in its purpose. Right livelihood, therefore, is this profound twofold practice. On the outside, it is the commitment to choose work that aligns with our compassionate values, to cause as little harm as possible. On the inside, it is the even deeper commitment to bring our full presence, our integrity, and a spirit of selfless service to whatever work we find ourselves doing. It heals the wound between our inner and outer lives, allowing our work to become a vehicle for our awakening. This entire foundation of ethical conduct, right speech, right action, and right livelihood is the firm ground upon which a stable and peaceful mind can be built. But to maintain this ethical purity in a complicated world requires strength. It requires a constant, directed will to choose the wholesome over the unwholesome, to cultivate the good and abandon the harmful. This need for a conscious and sustained energy brings us to the third and final division of the Noble Eightfold Path, the profound training of the mind itself. We begin this inner cultivation with the practice of right effort. Having laid the firm and compassionate foundation of ethical conduct, the sila that protects our practice from the outside world, we now turn inward. We enter the third and final division of the Noble Eightfold Path, the division of samadhi, or the training of the mind itself. This is where we learn to work directly with the raw material of our own consciousness. This inner cultivation begins with the sixth factor of the path, right effort, or samavayama. This is the energy of the path, the engine that drives the chariot of liberation. The word effort in English can sometimes conjure images of strain, of gritting one's teeth, of a grim and joyless struggle. But this is not the spirit of right effort. The Pali word vayama is better understood as endeavor, persistence, or joyful energy. It is the energy not of a slave breaking rocks, but of a skilled and loving gardener tending to their precious garden. It is the understanding that the mind is not a fixed, immutable thing, but a landscape that can be cultivated. With wise and sustained effort, we can transform the tangled, weed-choked wilderness of an untrained mind into a place of beauty, order, and nourishment. The practice of right effort is a complete and brilliant psychological strategy, broken down into four distinct, yet related, functions. These are often called the four great efforts, and they provide a comprehensive guide for how to skillfully manage our mental energy in any situation. The first of these is the effort to prevent. This is the proactive, preventative dimension of the practice. It is the wisdom of a skilled gardener who knows it is far easier to prevent weeds from taking root than it is to pull them out later. This effort involves acting as a wise and vigilant gatekeeper for our mind. We learn, through mindfulness, to recognize the external triggers and internal habits that tend to give rise to unwholesome states like anger, greed, anxiety, or despair. Perhaps we notice that scrolling through a certain social media feed reliably provokes feelings of envy and inadequacy. The effort of prevention might mean choosing to limit our exposure to that feed. Perhaps we know that engaging in a certain type of conversation inevitably leads to gossip and negativity. The effort here is to skillfully steer the conversation in a more wholesome direction, or to politely excuse ourselves. This is not about hiding from the world in fear. It is the wise and compassionate practice of guarding the sense dorsauer, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and choosing not to needlessly expose ourselves to mental toxins, just as we would choose not to knowingly consume spoiled food. The second function is the effort to abandon. This is what we do when our gatekeeper has slipped, and a weed has already sprouted in the garden of the mind. An unwholesome sati, a surge of anger, a wave of obsessive desire, a cloud of self-pity has already arisen. The untrained reaction is either to indulge the state, letting it grow wild and take over, or to suppress it with guilt and self-criticism, which only drives it underground. Right effort offers a middle way. The effort to abandon is the skillful application of energy to uproot and discard this unwholesome state. The Buddha offered several practical techniques for this. We can apply an antidote. When anger arises, we can intentionally bring to mind a thought of loving kindness. We can reflect on the drawbacks of the unwholesome state, contemplating how anger poisons our own heart and harms our relationships. We can investigate the impermanent nature of the feeling itself, watching it as an impersonal cloud passing through the sky of our awareness, knowing that this, too, will pass. Or we can simply shift our attention, like changing the channel on a television, to a more wholesome object, such as the physical sensation of our breath. This is not suppression. It is a wise and compassionate redirection of our mental energy, gently but firmly removing the weed so that it cannot go to seed. The third function is the effort to arouse or to cultivate. A garden is not defined merely by the absence of weeds. It is defined by the beauty of what is grown there. This is the joyful and creative aspect of right effort. It is the conscious decision to plant the seeds of the good, the beautiful, and the wholesome in our minds. It is the effort to generate positive mental states that are not currently present. If we are feeling discouraged or apathetic, we can make the effort to arouse energy and inspiration. We might do this by reflecting on the great potential of our human life, by reading an inspiring spiritual text, or by contemplating the qualities of the Buddha. If we are feeling disconnected or self-absorbed, we can make the effort to cultivate loving kindness by deliberately wishing well for ourselves and for others. If we are feeling ungrateful, we can make the effort to generate gratitude by consciously bringing to mind the many blessings in our life, from the simple gift of our breath to the kindness we have received from others. This is the active, creative work of sowing the flowers of joy, compassion, peace, and wisdom in our inner landscape. The fourth and final function is the effort to maintain or to nurture. Once a beautiful flower has bloomed in our garden, once a wholesome state like peace, clarity, or compassion has arisen, our work is not yet done. The untrained mind, out of habit, will quickly move on to the next distraction, allowing the beautiful state to wither. The effort to maintain is the practice of protecting and nurturing these precious states so they can deepen and flourish. If we experience a moment of profound peace and meditation, we make the effort to savor it, to incline the mind towards it, to allow it to permeate our being, rather than immediately jumping up to check our phone. If a feeling of genuine compassion arises, we make the effort to stay with it, to breathe with it, to let it inform our next actions. This is the practice of watering the flowers we have planted, of ensuring they get enough sunlight, and of protecting them from the pests of distraction and heedlessness. Over time, through this nurturing effort, these fleeting positive states become stable and abiding qualities of our character. It is absolutely crucial to understand the quality of this effort. The path to awakening is a middle way, and this applies directly to the energy we bring to it. We must avoid two extremes. The first is the extreme of laxity or laziness. This is a passive, complacent attitude, a lack of will or commitment. It is the mindset of the gardener who allows their garden to become completely overgrown with weeds, rationalizing that it is all natural. This leads nowhere. The other extreme is equally unskillful, the extreme of excessive striving. This is the tense, anxious, forceful effort of a perfectionist. It is filled with impatience, self-judgment, and a constant, grim sense of struggle. This kind of white-knuckled effort creates more stress than it relieves. It is unsustainable, and it inevitably leads to burnout and discouragement. The Buddha told a beautiful story that perfectly illustrates this balanced approach. There was a monk named Sona who had been born into a wealthy family and had very delicate feet. He was practicing with ferocious, almost violent, intensity. He practiced walking meditation so much that his feet split open and bled, staining the path where he walked. Yet despite his incredible exertion, he felt he was making no spiritual progress. He grew deeply discouraged and thought of giving up the monastic life altogether. The Buddha, with his psychic powers, knew Sona's thoughts and appeared before him. He asked him, "Sona, is it true that before you became a monk, you were a skilled musician, an expert in playing the lute?" Sona confirmed that he was. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, Sona, What happens if you tune the strings of your lute too tightly? Sona replied, Venerable Sir, if the strings are too tight, they will break. And what happens? The Buddha continued. If you tune them too loosely, Sir, Sona said, if the strings are too loose, they will produce no sound. The Buddha then delivered the crucial teaching. In the same way, Sona, effort that is too strained leads to restlessness and agitation, and effort that is too slack leads to laziness and sloth. You must tune the energy of your practice just as you tune the strings of your lute, not too tight and not too loose, but perfectly balanced and harmonious. Then, the beautiful music of awakening can be played. This is the very soul of right effort. It is the art of tuning our own instrument. It is a wise, joyful, and sustainable application of our life's energy. It is courageous and persistent, yet at the same time, patient and gentle. It is the delight a gardener takes in the process of cultivation, not the desperate anxiety of a farmer worrying about the harvest. Right effort is the engine that propels us along the path, the conscious will that transforms the mind from a chaotic wilderness into a flourishing garden of peace. But how do we know when to apply which effort? How do we know which weeds need pulling and which flowers need watering in any given moment? This skillful application of energy requires a clear and constant awareness of what is actually happening in our inner landscape. The energy of right effort must be guided by the light of a discerning, moment-to-moment attention. This brings us to the very heart of Buddhist meditation, the indispensable practice of right mindfulness. The journey along the Eightfold Path has now brought us from the foundational ground of ethical conduct to the inner training of the mind. We have seen that this training requires a wise and balanced energy, the right effort that cultivates the garden of our mind. But this energy, to be effective, cannot be blind. It requires a light, a guide, a constant and unwavering awareness of the inner landscape. This guiding light is the seventh factor of the path, the very heart of Buddhist meditation and the key to liberation. Right mindfulness, or samasati. If right effort is the engine of our practice, right mindfulness is the driver, perceiving the road ahead and steering with gentle precision. The Pali word sati carries the beautiful connotation of remembering or bearing in mind. It is the practice of remembering to be present, remembering to return to this moment again and again. It is the art of arriving fully in our own life. Right mindfulness is a quality of awareness that is both simple and profound. It is simple in its instruction, to pay attention to your present moment experience. It is profound in its effects, for this simple act, cultivated with patience, has the power to untangle the deepest knots of our suffering. We must first understand what mindfulness is not. It is not an attempt to empty the mind or to stop our thoughts. The mind produces thoughts naturally, just as the heart beats. To fight against thoughts is just another form of struggle. Nor is mindfulness a vague, dreamy, spaced-out state. On the contrary, it is a state of heightened clarity, of bright, vivid, and engaged attention. The most crucial quality of this awareness is that it is non-judgmental. It is the quality of a gentle, impartial observer, watching the flow of experience without getting caught in it. It does not condemn, it does not praise, it does not cling, and it does not push away. It simply sees what is present, exactly as it is. This non-reactive quality is the secret to its transformative power. To provide a systematic training in this faculty, the Buddha laid out a comprehensive framework known as the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. This is the complete territory for our exploration. The first foundation, and the primary anchor for our practice, is mindfulness of the body, or kayanupassana. The body is our greatest teacher of the present moment, because it is always, undeniably, here and now. You cannot be in your body in the past or in the future. To bring attention to the body is to bring attention to the present. The most common and accessible way to practice this is through mindfulness of breathing, or anapanasati. The instruction is beautifully simple. We sit, and we bring our gentle attention to the physical sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. We might feel it as a coolness or a pressure at the tip of the nostrils, or as the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen. That is all. We are not trying to control the breath to make it deeper or slower. We are not thinking about the breath. We are feeling its raw, physical sensation. Inevitably, the mind will wander into thought. This is not a failure. The moment we realize the mind has wandered is a moment of success, for it is a moment of mindfulness. In that moment, we gently, without criticism, acknowledge the thought and guide our attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. Each return is like a training repetition for the muscle of attention. This practice calms the nervous system, anchors the mind, and provides a safe and stable home base to which we can always return. Mindfulness of the body extends beyond the breath. We practice being aware of the body's postures, knowing when we are walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. As you walk, you can feel the contact of your feet on the ground, the subtle shift of balance in the body. When you stand, you can feel the solidity and the verticality of your posture. This practice dissolves the artificial barrier between formal meditation and the rest of life. Furthermore, we can bring mindfulness to all our daily activities. When washing the dishes, we can feel the warmth of the water on our hands, see the soap bubbles, hear the clink of the plates. When brushing our teeth, we can be fully present with the movement of the brush and the taste of the paste. By bringing this quality of attention to these mundane moments, we transform them from unconscious routines into opportunities for practice. Deeper practices of body contemplation involve mentally scanning the body from head to toe, or reflecting on the body as being composed of the four elements: earth, solidity, water, cohesion, fire, temperature, and air, motion, which helps to deconstruct our solid sense of identification with it and reveals its impersonal, process-like nature. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or Vedananupassana. This is a crucial and subtle practice. Here, the word feeling does not refer to complex emotions like love or anger, but to the raw, immediate, pre-verbal tone of any experience. Every single moment of our lives, every sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought has a feeling tone. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is the most fundamental way we relate to the world. The practice of mindfulness of feelings is to learn to recognize this tone as it arises. When you taste a sweet fruit, you note pleasant. When you hear a jarring noise, you note unpleasant. When you feel the neutral sensation of the air on your skin, you note neutral. This practice is revolutionary because it interrupts our deepest conditioning. Our default programming, driven by craving, tanha, is to react instantly and unconsciously to these feeling tones. When a pleasant feeling arises, our automatic reaction is to grasp it, to cling to it, to want more of it. When an unpleasant feeling arises, our automatic reaction is to push it away, to resist it, to escape it. And when a neutral feeling arises, we typically ignore it, becoming bored and seeking stimulation. This relentless cycle of grasping, resisting, and ignoring is the very engine of dukkha. Mindfulness of feelings allows us to see this process with clarity. We observe the arising of an unpleasant feeling, and instead of reacting with aversion, we simply note, unpleasant. We create a space between the feeling and our reaction to it. In this space lies our freedom. We see that the feeling itself is just a temporary, impersonal event. We don't have to obey its command to resist. We can simply allow it to be there and watch as it inevitably changes and passes away. By observing these feeling tones without judgment or reaction, we are breaking the chain of suffering at its weakest link. We are starving the roots of craving and aversion. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or Satyanupassana. Here, we turn our awareness to the overall state of our consciousness in any given moment. We learn to recognize the weather patterns of the mind. Just as a meteorologist observes whether the sky is cloudy, sunny, or stormy, we observe whether the mind is in a particular state. The practice is to simply know, without judgment. The mind is in a state of greed, or the mind is free from greed. The mind is in a state of anger, or the mind is free from anger. The mind is scattered and distracted, or the mind is focused and concentrated. The mind feels contracted and small, or the mind feels open and expansive. This practice cultivates a profound intimacy and honesty with ourselves. We stop identifying with our moods and start seeing them as temporary, conditioned states. Instead of being lost in a storm of anger and declaring, "I am so angry," we can step back and observe with clarity. The mental state of anger is present right now. This simple shift in perspective is incredibly liberating. It detaches us from the drama of our own minds. We are no longer the victim of our moods, but the calm, compassionate witness of them. Over time, we begin to see the causes and conditions that lead to these states arising, which gives us the wisdom to skillfully cultivate the positive and let go of the negative, putting the four great efforts into practice. The fourth and final foundation is mindfulness of Dhammas, or Dhammanupassana. This is the most comprehensive foundation, where we learn to look at our entire experience through the clarifying lens of the Buddha's core teachings, the Dhammas. It is the application of right view directly to our present moment awareness. This involves several categories of contemplation. We can observe our experience in terms of the 5 hindrances to meditation. When sleepiness arises, we don't just feel sleepy. We mindfully recognize the hindrance of sloth and torpor is present. We can then investigate its cause and apply an antidote. We can observe our experience in terms of the 5 aggregates. We can take any moment and deconstruct it into its components. This physical sensation is the aggregate of form. The pleasantness or unpleasantness of it is the aggregate of feeling. The recognition, this is a sound, is the aggregate of perception. This is a direct, experiential investigation of anatta, seeing that there is no solid self behind the process. Ultimately, we can observe our experience through the lens of the 4 noble truths themselves. In a moment of difficulty, we can see this feeling of anxiety is dukkha. This desire for it to go away is tanha, its origin. The possibility of letting it be without resistance is nirodha, its cessation. And this very act of mindful seeing is magga, the path. This is the culmination of the practice, where our lived experience becomes a direct confirmation of the Dharma. There is a famous Zen story about a student who asks his master, "What is the great secret of your profound peace and enlightenment?" The master replies simply, "When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sleep, I sleep." The student, confused, says, "But master, everyone does that." The master smiles and says, "Number, when most people eat, their minds are in 100 other places worrying about the future, ruminating on the past. When they walk, they are already at their destination in their minds. When you eat, I just eat. When you walk, I just walk." This is the essence of right mindfulness. It is the practice of being fully present for the totality of our experience, no matter how mundane. It is the art of showing up for our own life. As this steady, gentle, and unwavering light of mindfulness is held, as the mind becomes accustomed to resting in the present without being constantly tossed about on the waves of thought and emotion, it naturally begins to gather its energy. It settles, it grows calm, clear, and unified. It becomes like a still, deep lake, no longer churned by the winds of distraction. This stable, collected, and powerful quality of mind is the gateway to even deeper states of peace and insight. It is the natural fruit of sustained mindfulness. This is the practice of right concentration. The Great Path has led us on a journey from the outward expression of our ethics to the inner cultivation of our heart and mind. We have learned to gather our energy with right effort and to illuminate our inner world with the steady lamp of right mindfulness. As this mindfulness is sustained, as we patiently and persistently bring our awareness back to the present moment again and again, something remarkable begins to happen. The scattered, fragmented, and restless nature of the ordinary mind begins to subside. The wild horse of the mind, gently tamed by the rope of mindfulness, learns to stand still. Its energy, instead of being dissipated in 1,000 different directions, becomes collected, unified, and powerful. This state of collected, unified consciousness is the 8th and final factor of the path, right concentration, or samma samadhi. It is the culmination of the division of mental discipline, the fruit that grows from the flower of mindfulness. If mindfulness is the act of gathering all the rays of sunlight using a lens, concentration is the focused, brilliant point of light that is created, a point with the power to see deeply and to burn through illusion. It is essential to understand that right concentration does not arise by itself, out of sheer willpower. It is called right concentration precisely because it is supported, protected, and guided by the preceding 7 path factors. It is the pinnacle of the path, but it stands firmly upon the foundation of all that has come before. Without the ethical conduct of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, the mind would be too plagued by guilt, remorse, and worldly agitation to ever find the stillness required for deep concentration. It would be like trying to see the reflection of the moon in a boiling pot of water. Without right view and right intention, our concentration could be dangerously misplaced. A sniper on a battlefield requires immense concentration, but it is a concentration aimed at harming, and thus it is not right concentration. Without right effort, we would lack the joyful persistence to stay with the practice when it becomes difficult. And most immediately, without right mindfulness, concentration is impossible. Mindfulness and concentration are like two wings of a bird. They work together to create flight. Mindfulness is the broader quality of awareness. It is the shepherd that notices when a sheep, a thought, a feeling has wandered from the flock and gently guides it back. Concentration is the state of the unified flock, grazing peacefully together in one place. In the act of meditation, it is mindfulness that recognizes the mind has wandered into planning. It is right effort that provides the gentle energy to let go of the plan. And it is concentration that is the quality of the mind as it returns to and rests with the object of meditation. They are inseparable partners in the dance of mental cultivation. The practice of developing concentration typically involves focusing the mind on a single, chosen object. This provides a home base, an anchor for our awareness. The most commonly used object is the breath, a practice known as anapanasati, because the breath is always with us. It is rhythmically constant, and it is emotionally neutral. The instruction is to simply rest the entirety of one's attention on the physical sensation of the breath at one point in the body, perhaps the subtle feeling of air passing over the tip of the nostrils, or the gentle sensation of the rise and fall of the abdomen. The aim is to saturate our awareness with this one sensation, to become so intimate with it that there is no room for other distracting thoughts. Of course, the mind will wander. This is its nature. The practice is not to prevent the wandering, but to change our relationship to it. When we notice, through mindfulness, that the mind has drifted, we do not become frustrated or discouraged. We simply, gently, and patiently escort our attention back to the breath, as a loving parent would guide a wandering child back to their side. We do this 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Each return is a victory. Each return strengthens the mind's capacity to remain steady. As this practice deepens, as the periods of sustained attention grow longer, a profound shift occurs. The ordinary chatter of the mind, the 5 hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt, begin to recede. They are not forced away, but they naturally fall away, just as darkness vanishes when a light is brought into a room. As these hindrances subside, the mind enters into states of deep meditative absorption, known as the jhanas. These are states of profound bliss and clarity, born of a purified and unified mind. In the first jhana, the mind is filled with 2 new factors, piti and sukha. Piti is a rapturous, energetic joy, a thrilling sense of delight and zest that can feel like electricity coursing through the body. Sukha is a deeper, more serene happiness, a feeling of profound contentment and well-being. The mind is blissfully absorbed with its object of meditation, shielded from the troubles of the world. As the concentration deepens further into the second jhana, the initial mental activity of directing the mind onto the object falls away. The mind now stays with the object effortlessly. The piti and sukha intensify, no longer seeming to come from letting go of the hindrances, but arising from the very fabric of the concentration itself. There is a powerful sense of confidence and inner stillness. Moving into the third jhana, the more energetic and exciting quality of piti fades away, leaving only the deep, pervasive contentment of sukha. The mind becomes utterly calm, serene, and exquisitely sensitive. One abides in a state of lucid, mindful equanimity, a profound peace that permeates every cell of one's being. Finally, in the fourth jhana, even this subtle bliss of sukha is released. What remains is a state of pure, unshakable equanimity, or upekkha. The mind is described as being like a candle flame in a place where there is no wind, perfectly still, unwavering, and brilliantly bright. This is not a state of dullness or a trance. It is a state of supreme alertness, a mind honed to its absolute peak of clarity and stability. It is crucial to understand the purpose of these powerful states. The jhanas are not the final goal of the path. They are not meant to be an escape from life, a spiritual hiding place to avoid our problems. They are, in one sense, a divine spa for the mind, a place to rest, heal, and gather immense strength. But their ultimate purpose is instrumental. The mind that emerges from a state of deep concentration is a mind that has been transformed. It is no longer a flimsy, scattered, and unreliable tool. It is now extraordinarily calm, supple, stable, and sharp. It is like a sword that has been forged and tempered in the hottest fires, emerging strong, flexible, and with a razor-sharp edge. This mind is now the perfect instrument for the work of insight, or vipassana. With this powerful, concentrated awareness, the practitioner can turn their attention back towards the nature of their own experience and see reality with a clarity that was previously impossible. They can observe the ceaseless arising and passing away of all phenomena, gaining a direct, irrefutable insight into anicca. They can perceive the subtle, pervasive unsatisfactoriness woven into all conditioned things, seeing dukkha in its deepest form, and they can penetrate the illusion of a solid self, seeing anatta in the transparent, process-like nature of the five aggregates. It is this concentrated mind that has the power to cut through the deepest roots of ignorance and to achieve final liberation. Our ordinary, untrained mind is like a lake whose waters are filled with mud. It is constantly being churned and agitated by the winds of our desires, our fears, our worries, and our plans. In such a state, the water is opaque. We cannot see what lies beneath the surface. The practice of right concentration is the act of allowing these winds to die down. It is the patient process of letting the water become utterly still. As the stillness deepens, the mud, the five hindrances naturally and effortlessly settles to the bottom. The water becomes crystal clear, and now, for the first time, we can see all the way to the bottom of the lake. We can perceive the treasures of wisdom and the dangerous, jagged rocks of our own defilements with perfect, luminous clarity. Right concentration is the beautiful and powerful culmination of the entire Eightfold Path working in perfect harmony. It is the state of a mind that has been healed, unified, and purified, resulting in a profound peace and an unshakable stability. This mind, now settled and sharpened like a surgeon's scalpel, is no longer a passive victim of circumstances. It has become a powerful tool of investigation. With this newfound clarity, we are now equipped to look deeply into one of the most profound and misunderstood laws that governs our existence, the force that has shaped our past, our present, and our future. We are now ready to investigate the intricate and intimate workings of karma, the universal law of cause and effect. With a mind now capable of deep stillness and clarity, honed by the practices of mindfulness and concentration, we are prepared to investigate one of the most fundamental laws of existence. It is a law that is universally active, yet widely misunderstood, a concept that is often invoked to explain away suffering, but whose true understanding is a profound call to personal empowerment. This is the natural law of karma, or as it is more commonly known in the West, karma. Before we proceed, we must gently set aside the popular, distorted notions of this principle. We are not speaking of a cosmic system of reward and punishment administered by an unseen judge. We are not speaking of an unchangeable fate or a predetermined destiny that holds us in its grip. The Buddha's teaching on karma is far more subtle, more intimate, and infinitely more liberating. The word karma in the Pali language literally means action. At its heart, the law of karma is the law of action, and its result, the law of cause and effect. It is a natural principle, as impersonal and as reliable as the law of gravity. It states that our actions, driven by our intentions, are causes that will inevitably lead to corresponding effects in our lives. This is an exploration of how we are, in every moment, the architects of our own reality. The absolute key to understanding karma, the very pivot upon which the entire teaching turns, is the centrality of intention. The Buddha declared this unequivocally when he said, "It is volition, O monks, that I call karma. Having willed, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This means that the karmic charge of an action is not contained in the physical deed itself, nor even in the result of that deed, but in the quality of the intention, the volition, the will that precedes and motivates it. It is the energy of the heart, that plants the karmic seed. We can see this clearly in our own experience. To give a gift with a pure heart, with the simple, selfless intention of bringing joy to another, is a wholesome or skillful karma. It lightens our own heart and plants a seed of future happiness. To perform the exact same external act of giving, but with the hidden intention of making the other person feel indebted or to show off one's own generosity, is an unwholesome or unskillful karma. Though the act looks the same on the outside, the inner energy is tainted by greed and ego, and the seed it plants is one of future complication and subtle suffering. This understanding is profoundly empowering because it brings the entire process of shaping our destiny inward. It is not what happens to us that is of primary importance, but the quality of the intention with which we respond. Every thought, every word, every physical act is a form of karma, for they are all expressions of our will. This understanding of karma as intentional action completely dispels the paralyzing myth of fate. In a fatalistic view of karma, people might resign themselves to suffering, thinking, "This misfortune is happening to me because of something I did in the past. It is my karma, and there is nothing I can do." This is a profound and debilitating misreading of the teaching. The truth is far more dynamic. The results of our past karmas certainly create the conditions of our present moment. Our past actions influence the circumstances into which we are born, the nature of our body, and the tendencies of our mind. They deal us the hand of cards we are holding right now. But the past does not, in any way, determine how we choose to play that hand. Our freedom, our power, lies entirely in this present moment. Right now, with this next breath, we are choosing our intention. We are performing a new action. We are creating new karma. This new karma, this present moment choice, is what will shape our future. Imagine the weather on any given day, the current conditions, the temperature, the humidity, the clouds air, the result of a vast and complex interplay of past atmospheric events. We cannot change the weather that is here now. This is like the result of our past karma, but we have complete freedom in how we respond to it. We can choose to curse the rain and stay inside, miserable, or we can choose to put on a raincoat and go for a joyful walk. We can choose appropriate clothing. Our present response is our new karma. We are not prisoners of the past. We are inheritors of the past, and we are creators of the future, working always and only in the laboratory of the present moment. The Buddha used a powerful set of metaphors to describe this intimate relationship. He said, "All beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. They are born of their karma, related to their karma, and live supported by their karma. Whatever karma they do, for good or for evil, that they will inherit." Let us unpack this rich statement. To be the owner of our karma means that our actions belong to us and to no one else. We have ultimate responsibility for them. There is no one else to blame for our unskillful actions, and no one can take credit for our skillful ones. To be the heir of our karma means that we will, without fail, inherit the results of our choices. Wholesome, compassionate, and wise actions will ripen into experiences of happiness and peace. Unwholesome, cruel, and ignorant actions will ripen into experiences of suffering and pain. This is not a reward or punishment from an external God, but the natural unfolding of the seeds we ourselves have planted. This understanding liberates us from the twin traps of blaming others for our problems and praying for an external savior to fix them. The power and the responsibility lie within. The most helpful analogy for understanding the workings of karma is that of a farmer. A farmer works within a field. She cannot control every condition. She cannot control the weather, the timing of the rains, the intensity of the sun, the strength of the winds. She cannot control if a sudden blight or a flock of birds will descend upon her land. These external, uncontrollable factors are like the results of our past karma, the given circumstances of our life. However, the farmer has absolute, 100% control over two crucial things: what seeds she chooses to plant, and how diligently she tends her field. She can choose to plant the wholesome seeds of wheat, corn, and vegetables, or she can choose to plant the unwholesome seeds of poisonous weeds. After planting, she can choose to practice right effort to water her crops, to pull the weeds, to protect the sprouts from pests. Or she can be lazy and neglectful, leaving the field to its own devices. The final harvest she receives is not a matter of fate. It is the direct result of the interplay between the uncontrollable weather and her own present moment choices and actions. A wise farmer, by planting good seeds and tending her field with care, creates the highest probability of a bountiful harvest, even in difficult weather. An unwise farmer, even with perfect weather, who plants weeds or neglects his field, will reap only bitterness. We are all farmers in the field of our own consciousness. Our intentions are the seeds. The practices of the Eightfold Path are the methods of skillful cultivation. To understand the law of karma correctly is, therefore, not to feel burdened by the past, but to feel empowered in the present. It frees us from the paralysis of fatalism and the bitterness of victimhood. It reveals that every single moment of our lives is charged with immense significance. Every thought we choose to cultivate, every word we decide to speak, every action we undertake is a creative act, shaping the person we are becoming and the world we will inhabit. It places the awesome power to create our own happiness and to put an end to our own suffering firmly and squarely within our own hearts. This profound understanding naturally leads to a vital question. If our intentions are truly the seeds that determine our future harvest, what are the most powerful, most wholesome, and most transformative seeds that we can possibly plant? What actions of the heart have the greatest capacity to yield a harvest of unshakable peace and happiness? The Buddha taught that among the most potent seeds for purifying the mind and generating immense good is the active cultivation of a boundless, unconditional, and heartfelt friendliness towards all of life. This brings us to the radiant practice of the heart, the deliberate sowing of the most beautiful seed of all, the seed of metta, or loving kindness. Having understood the profound law of karma that our intentional actions are the seeds from which our future grows, a clear and vital question arises. What, then, are the most skillful, the most powerful, the most wholesome seeds we can possibly plant? If we are to be the conscious farmers of our own minds, what crop yields the most beautiful and nourishing harvest of happiness and peace? The answer offered by the Buddha is both simple and boundless. It is the practice of actively cultivating an unconditional, heartfelt, and all-embracing friendliness towards ourselves and all of life. This is the radiant practice of metta, a Pali word most often translated as loving kindness. Metta is the direct and potent antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, fear, and aversion. It is the gentle warmth that can melt the glaciers of hatred and isolation in our own hearts. It is not a sentimental or romantic love, nor is it a possessive attachment that depends on how others treat us. Metta is a steady, unconditional radiation of goodwill, a sincere and powerful wish for the genuine well-being and happiness of any living being, simply because they exist. It is the noblest seed we can sow. The practice of cultivating metta is a systematic training of the heart, a gradual expansion of our capacity for love, moving in ever-widening circles. And the place where this practice must always begin, the foundation upon which all genuine compassion for others is built, is with ourselves. This is often the most difficult step. For many of us, our inner world is governed by a harsh inner critic. We are experts at judging ourselves, at ruminating on our flaws, at feeling we are not good enough. The idea of offering kindness to ourselves can feel awkward, selfish, or even impossible. But the wisdom of the path is clear. You cannot pour water from an empty vessel. To try and generate genuine love for others when you are filled with self-aversion is an almost impossible task. It would be inauthentic and draining. Therefore, the practice of offering metta to ourselves is not a selfish act. It is the necessary and compassionate act of filling our own well, so that we have an abundance of kindness to share with the world. It is about learning to be a good friend to the person we are with 24 hours a day, ourselves. To begin this practice, we find a comfortable and dignified posture, a posture that embodies both alertness and ease. We gently close our eyes and bring our awareness inward, perhaps to the sensation of the breath or the feeling of the heart space. Then, we bring to mind an image of ourselves, perhaps as we are now, or as a young, innocent child. We hold this image with a sense of tenderness. And then, slowly, gently, we begin to offer ourselves the phrases of metta. These are not empty affirmations, but heartfelt wishes, intentions planted directly into the soil of the mind. The classic phrases are a beautiful guide. We begin with the wish. may I be safe. This is a wish for protection from all inner and outer harm, a wish to be safe from accidents and dangers in the world, but also to be safe from the tyranny of our own anxiety, fear, and self-criticism. We are wishing for a state of inner and outer security. We silently repeat the phrase, letting its meaning sink into our heart. May I be safe. Then we offer the second phrase, may I be healthy. This is a wish for the well-being of our physical body, a wish for strength, for vitality, and for freedom from sickness and pain. It is a gesture of kindness and appreciation towards this body that carries us through life, regardless of its current state of health. We are nurturing the intention for wholeness. May I be healthy. The third phrase is, may I be happy. This is not a wish for fleeting pleasures or constant excitement. It is a wish for a deep, abiding happiness and contentment, a joy that comes from a peaceful heart and a clear mind. It is the wish to be free from the inner causes of suffering and to touch a state of genuine well-being. May I be happy. And finally, we offer the fourth phrase, may I live with ease. This is a wish for a sense of peace and grace as we navigate the inevitable challenges of life. It is not a wish for all difficulties to disappear, but for the inner strength, patience, and wisdom to meet those difficulties with less struggle, less resistance, and a greater sense of calm acceptance. It is a wish for a life of balance and harmony. May I live with ease. We repeat these phrases silently, over and over, not as a mechanical mantra, but as a sincere offering from our heart to our own being. If feelings of resistance, doubt, or unworthiness arise, we do not fight them. We simply acknowledge them with the same gentle awareness and return to the phrases. We are patiently, kindly, holding a space of unconditional friendliness for ourselves, perhaps for the very first time. Once we have established a foundation of warmth and kindness for ourselves, we begin to expand the circle. We now bring to mind a benefactor, a dear friend, or a loved one. We choose someone for whom our heart feels an easy, uncomplicated affection, a beloved family member, a cherished mentor, a close companion, even a beloved pet. We bring their image clearly to mind, picturing them happy and well. Then, using them as the object of our attention, we extend the same wishes outwards. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We allow our heart to radiate this feeling of warmth and goodwill towards them. This step helps to amplify the feeling of metta, to make it strong and stable. Next, in a crucial step that stretches the muscle of the heart, we bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we see in our daily lives, but for whom we feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, the person we nod to at the bus stop. They are usually just a part of the background of our lives. The practice here is to bring them into the foreground, to see them as a full human being, just like us, with their own hopes, fears, and desire for happiness. And we offer them the same heartfelt wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This practice is a powerful antidote to the poison of indifference. It breaks down the artificial walls we build between people who matter and people who don't. It helps us to recognize our shared humanity with strangers, making our world feel warmer, kinder, and more interconnected. Now we arrive at the great challenge and the most transformative stage of the practice, offering metta to a difficult person. This must be approached with wisdom and care. We are advised to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the person who is the source of our deepest trauma. This is a training exercise, not a spiritual battle, and it is vital to understand the intention here. We are not doing this to condone their harmful actions. We are not forcing ourselves to forgive and forget. We are not even doing it for their benefit. We are doing this entirely for the liberation of our own heart. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger and resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned. This practice is the act of opening our own fist and dropping that burning coal. So, we bring to mind this difficult person. We try to see them not just as the source of our pain, but as a suffering human being, driven by their own ignorance, their own fear, their own dukkha. And from this place of deeper understanding, we attempt to offer them the wishes of metta. We may have to change the phrasing. it may feel inauthentic to wish them happiness. Perhaps we can start with, "To the best of my ability, I wish you no harm," or "May you be free from the anger and pain that causes you to act this way." Or we may simply hold them in our awareness and repeat, "May you be safe, may you find peace." Great resistance may arise. The words may feel like ash in our mouth. This is to be expected. The practice is to simply stay with the intention, however faint, to soften that hardened place in our own heart, even by 1 degree. This is the profound alchemy of the path, the turning of the lead of hatred into the gold of a liberated heart. Finally, having worked through these specific categories, we allow our metta to become boundless. We bring all 4 people to mind at once: ourselves, our loved one, the neutral person, and the difficult person, and we hold them all in a sphere of equal, unconditional loving kindness, wishing them all well without distinction. Then, we let the feeling radiate outwards in all directions, to everyone in the room with us, in the building, in our city, in our country. We extend it to all human beings on the planet, and then to all non-human beings, the animals, the insects, the creatures in the sea and in the sky. We radiate metta forwards, backwards, to our left, to our right, above and below. We saturate the entire universe with this heartfelt intention. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. This is the culmination of the practice, a state known as a liberation of the heart, a mind that knows no enemy and a love that knows no boundary. There is a powerful story that demonstrates the true strength of metta. A rival of the Buddha, in a fit of jealousy, schemed to have him killed. He got the keeper of the fiercest royal elephant, Nalagiri, to intoxicate the animal and release it onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. When the people saw the massive, enraged elephant charging towards the Buddha, they screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood his ground, perfectly calm, and radiated a powerful, concentrated wave of pure metta directly at the charging beast. The elephant, on the very verge of trampling him, felt this immense wave of unconditional friendliness and love. Its rage completely dissolved. Its steps slowed, its trunk lowered, and it knelt peacefully at the Buddha's feet. This story teaches us that metta is not a weak or passive sentiment. It is an immense power, a spiritual force that can disarm the most violent hatred and fear first and foremost within our own hearts. It is the practice of dissolving the illusion of the separate self at the level of our deepest feelings, recognizing that the wish for happiness is the universal right of all that lives. This radiant wish for all beings to be happy is one of the 4 great abodes of the enlightened heart. But what happens when we turn our attention from the wish for happiness to the inescapable reality of suffering? What is the heart's response when it encounters pain, both our own and that of others? This question leads us from the sunshine of loving kindness to its essential and tender companion, the active practice of karuna, or compassion. If the practice of metta, or loving kindness, is the radiant sun of the heart, warming all of life with the wish for happiness, then the practice of karuna, or compassion, is the gentle, nourishing rain that falls upon a suffering world. As we cultivate a heart that is open and friendly, we cannot help but notice the stark reality that many beings are not happy. We see pain, we see struggle, we see confusion. Karuna is the heart's inevitable, tender, and powerful response to this perception of dukkha, or suffering. It is the second of the 4 divine abodes, or sublime states of mind, and it flows naturally from a heart softened by metta. Karuna is often described as the trembling or quivering of the heart in the face of pain. It is the felt resonance with the suffering of another, coupled with a sincere and active wish. May you be free from this suffering. It is the movement from a generalized goodwill to a specific, engaged response to the reality of pain. It is critically important to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity arises from a sense of separation and superiority. When we pity someone, we look down upon them from a perceived height. We think, "Oh, that poor person, I am so glad I am not in their situation." Pity maintains and even strengthens the boundary between me, the fortunate one, and you, the unfortunate one. It can be condescending and ultimately unhelpful, as it is rooted in the ego's need to feel secure by comparison. Karuna, true compassion, arises from the exact opposite place, a place of equality and shared humanity. It is born from the deep, experiential understanding of dukkha that we have been cultivating. It is the recognition that says, I know the feeling of pain. I know fear. I know sorrow. I see that you are experiencing this now. In this fundamental vulnerability, we are the same. Compassion dissolves the boundary between self and other. It does not look down from above. It meets the other at eye level, heart to heart. It is not feeling sad for someone. It is the courageous act of feeling with them, of acknowledging our shared condition without fear. A common and understandable fear that arises when we contemplate opening ourselves to the world's pain is that we will be utterly overwhelmed. If we truly let in the immense suffering of the world, the wars, the famine, the sickness, the injustice, will we not simply drown in a sea of sorrow? This is a valid concern, and it points to the difference between true compassion and what is sometimes called idiot compassion or sentimentality. Idiot compassion is a sorrow that paralyzes us. It is to see someone drowning and to jump in and drown alongside them out of a feeling of overwhelming grief. It helps no one. True karuna, however, is not a weak or fragile state. It is immensely strong, for it is always balanced by wisdom and equanimity. This is where compassion works hand in hand with another of the divine abodes, upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is the spacious, calm, and clear-minded understanding that all beings are the owners and heirs of their own karma. It is the wisdom that recognizes we cannot ultimately control the lives of others. We cannot bear their karmic burdens for them, nor can we prevent all suffering. While compassion is the trembling of the heart that says, I feel this with you, equanimity is the steady mind that says, I cannot carry this for you, but I can stand with you as a source of strength and support. This balance is the key to avoiding compassion, fatigue, or burnout. It allows us to keep our hearts open and responsive to suffering without losing our own center, without becoming depleted. A doctor who faints at the sight of blood cannot help her patients. Similarly, a practitioner of compassion must cultivate an inner stability, an equanimity that allows them to be a calm refuge in a storm, rather than another piece of debris tossed about by the waves. This marriage of a tender heart and a steady mind makes our compassion both sustainable and effective. True compassion is never a passive feeling. It is the engine of enlightened action. It is the deep motivation behind the practices of right action and right livelihood. When we truly feel the suffering of another being, the natural, unforced response is the desire to help, to alleviate that pain in some way. Compassion is what turns our spiritual practice from an inward-looking, self-centered pursuit into an active force for good in the world. It ensures that our quest for inner peace does not become a selfish retreat from the world's problems, but rather the very foundation from which we can engage with those problems more effectively. This compassionate action can manifest in countless ways. On a small, personal scale, it is the act of offering a listening, non-judgmental ear to a friend who is in distress. It is the patience we show to a frustrated child or an elderly parent. It is the simple act of kindness towards a stranger who is struggling. On a larger scale, compassion is the force that moves us to volunteer at a homeless shelter, to donate to a cause that helps the sick, or to advocate for social or environmental justice. It is the force that might guide our entire career path, leading us to become healers, teachers, counselors, or peacemakers. Karuna is the heart's yes to the world, a commitment to reduce suffering wherever and however we can. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, the ideal of active compassion is beautifully embodied in the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is a being who, on the verge of enlightenment, makes a profound vow to postpone their own final nirvana and remain in the world to help all other beings find freedom from suffering. The story is told that Avalokiteshvara made a vow to listen to the cries of every single being in every corner of the universe, and to not rest until all were liberated. He worked tirelessly for eons, but one day he looked out and saw that despite all his efforts, for every being he had helped, countless more were still lost in pain. The sheer, immeasurable weight of the world's suffering overwhelmed him, and in a moment of profound despair, his head shattered into 1,000 pieces. Seeing his immense compassionate resolve, the Buddhas of all directions came to his aid. They gathered the pieces of his shattered head and reassembled him, not with one head, but with 11, so he could hear the cries of suffering from all directions at once. They then gave him 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in the palm of each hand, they placed an eye. The 1,000 hands represent the boundless, skillful means to help in any situation imaginable, and the 1,000 eyes represent the profound wisdom to see precisely what kind of help is needed. This powerful image teaches us a vital lesson about the nature of true compassion. Karuna is not merely a sentimental feeling of sadness, the shattered heart. It is the powerful and courageous union of boundless empathy with profound wisdom and skillful action, the 1,000 hands and eyes. It is an intelligent, active, and fearless response to the reality of suffering. Karuna, then, is the heart's tender, wise, and strong response to the world's pain. It dissolves our sense of separation, connecting us to all of life in a bond of shared vulnerability. It provides the unwavering motivation to turn our spiritual practice into a vehicle for healing, both for ourselves and for others. As we cultivate a heart that is open and responsive, filled with loving kindness for the happiness of others and deep compassion for their suffering, we inevitably encounter our own inner blockages. We find old wounds, resentments we are still holding, and grievances that prevent our hearts from opening fully. To clear this inner ground and allow the waters of love and compassion to flow freely, another essential quality is needed: the liberating power of forgiveness. As we cultivate a heart that is open to the world, a heart that wishes for the happiness of all beings through loving kindness and trembles with compassion at their suffering, we will inevitably encounter the inner barriers that prevent this love from flowing freely. We will discover old wounds, stored resentments, and the lingering bitterness of grievances we have held onto for years or even decades. These are like heavy stones that weigh down the heart, making it contracted and defensive. Before our love and compassion can become truly boundless, we must undertake the courageous work of removing these stones. This is the practice of forgiveness, and it is, perhaps, one of the most misunderstood and liberating practices on the entire spiritual path. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger and resentment towards someone who has harmed you is like grasping a burning hot coal with the intention of throwing it at them. In the end, you are the one who is being seared by the pain. Forgiveness, therefore, is not a gift we give to the other person. It is a profound act of self-love, a compassionate gift of freedom that we give to ourselves. It is the moment we decide to drop the burning coal, not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve to be free from the pain of being burned. To begin this practice, we must first clear away the thicket of misconceptions that surround it, for these are the primary reasons we resist it. The first and most important is that forgiveness is not condoning. To forgive someone for a harmful act does not in any way mean that we are saying what they did was acceptable. It does not excuse their behavior, nor does it absolve them of responsibility for their actions. We can forgive someone for their transgression, while still believing that they should face the legal or social consequences of what they did. Forgiveness and justice are not mutually exclusive. Forgiveness is an inner release of a personal burden. Justice is an outer balancing of societal harmony. Secondly, forgiveness is not forgetting. The popular phrase "forgive and forget" is often unhelpful and unrealistic. A deep wound leaves a scar, and the memory of the event may always remain. The practice of forgiveness does not aim to create a magical amnesia. Instead, it aims to drain the emotional poison from the memory. The memory may still be there, but it no longer has the power to trigger the anger, the pain, and the obsessive thoughts that cause us suffering in the present moment. We remember the lesson the experience taught us, but we let go of the emotional charge that keeps the wound fresh. Thirdly, forgiveness is not necessarily reconciliation. Forgiveness is a purely internal process that we undertake for our own well-being. It does not require any interaction with the person who harmed us. In fact, if that person is still a source of harm or toxicity in our lives, choosing not to reconcile with them is an act of wisdom and compassionate self-protection. We can forgive someone completely in the quiet of our own heart, and at the same time, make the wise decision to never see or speak to them again. You are under no obligation to reopen a door that leads to further pain. Forgiveness sets you free. regardless of whether the other person ever changes, apologizes, or even knows that you have forgiven them. Finally, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is an act of immense inner strength. It is far easier to cling to a grievance. Anger provides the ego with a sense of righteousness, a clear story of being the victim, which can feel validating. To let go of that story, to release the charge of resentment, requires great courage and a commitment to our own peace that is stronger than our desire to be right. It is the weak mind that is held captive by hatred. It is the strong and disciplined mind that has the power to let it go. The process of forgiving others can be undertaken as a gentle, patient, and methodical practice. It begins with the first step of acknowledging the pain. We cannot let go of a hurt that we have not allowed ourselves to fully feel. We must give ourselves permission to acknowledge the reality of our experience. Yes, what happened was unjust. It caused me real pain. This is not self-pity. It is an act of honest and compassionate self-validation. The next step is to consciously work to widen our perspective. This is where our understanding of dukkha and anatta becomes our greatest ally. We make an effort to see the person who harmed us, not as a two-dimensional villain, but as a complex and suffering human being, just like us. We reflect that their harmful actions did not arise from a vacuum. They arose from that person's own ignorance, their own fear, their own pain, their own delusion. They were in the grip of their own greed, hatred, or confusion. This does not excuse their action, but it helps to depersonalize it. The focus shifts from the painful thought, "They did this to me," to the wiser, more compassionate understanding. A suffering being, caught in their own confusion, acted in a way that caused suffering. Then, we must honestly assess the cost of our own unforgiveness. We look at the price we are paying, right now, for holding on to that hot coal. We notice the tension it creates in our body, the bitter taste it leaves in our mind, the way it makes us cynical and mistrustful. We see how the anger from one past event can spill over and poison our present relationships. We recognize, with clarity, that the only person being imprisoned by our resentment is ourselves. Finally, we make a conscious decision to release the burden. This can be a formal act of intention, done in meditation. We can bring the person to mind and silently say to them in our heart, "I have been carrying the burden of this anger and pain for long enough. For the sake of my own peace, for the healing of my own heart, I release you. I let go of the debt I feel you owe me. I will no longer carry this for you. I set myself free." This is a declaration of inner independence, a severing of the toxic energetic cord that binds us to a painful past. As difficult as forgiving others can be, the deepest and most challenging work is often in learning to forgive ourselves. Many of us are haunted by the shame and guilt of our own past mistakes. The process here is much the same. We must first fully acknowledge the harm we caused, without excuse or denial. We must allow ourselves to feel the genuine remorse that arises. Then, we must turn the lens of compassion onto the self who acted in that way. We must remember the person we were at that time, and understand that we, too, were acting out of our own ignorance, our own pain, our own confusion. We did the best we could with the understanding we had at that time. We apply the wisdom of Anicca, recognizing that the person who made that mistake is not the same person we are today. We have learned, we have grown, we have suffered the consequences, and we are no longer that person. We make a firm commitment to learn from the mistake and to act with greater wisdom and kindness in the future. And then, we offer ourselves the same gift of release. I forgive myself for acting from a place of ignorance. I accept my past. I release the burden of this shame, and I commit to a more wholesome future. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures the folly of holding on to resentment. Two monks were on a long pilgrimage. They came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman was standing there, afraid to cross. Without a word, the elder of the two monks hoisted her onto his back, waded across the river, and set her down gently on the other side. She thanked him, and he nodded. The two monks continued their journey. The younger monk was seething. Their monastic vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. He was scandalized by his elder's behavior. For miles he walked in agitated silence, replaying the scene over and over in his mind. Finally, Unable to contain himself any longer, he burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? You broke our sacred vows. You carried that woman across the river." The elder monk looked at him with a calm, gentle smile. "Brother," he said, "I left that woman on the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This is the question that the practice of forgiveness asks of us. What heavy burdens from our past are we still carrying with us, long after the event is over? Forgiveness is the ultimate act of self-love and spiritual maturity. It is the key that unlocks the prison of the past, allowing our hearts to finally be present, light, and free. It is the essential act of clearing the inner ground, so that new and more beautiful qualities of the heart can have the space to grow. With a heart that is now lighter, unburdened by the heavy stones of resentment and old grievances, a new capacity arises. When we are no longer preoccupied with the pain of the past or the perceived injustices done to us, we are free to notice and to celebrate the good fortune and happiness of others. This brings us to a joyful and expansive practice, the cultivation of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Having cleared the heart of resentment through the liberating power of forgiveness, we find ourselves standing on open, fertile ground. The heavy stones of past grievances have been removed, allowing a new and wondrous capacity to emerge. With a heart that is no longer preoccupied with its own wounds, we are now free to perceive the world with greater clarity and generosity. This leads us to the third of the four divine abodes, the sublime state of mudita, which translates as sympathetic or appreciative joy. If metta is the wish for all beings to find the causes of happiness, and karuna is the wish for them to be free from the causes of suffering, mudita is the active and wholehearted celebration of the happiness and good fortune that already exists in the world. It is the ability to feel genuine, selfless delight in the success, the virtue, and the joy of others. In a world often driven by competition and comparison, the practice of mudita is a radical act of spiritual maturity. It is the ultimate antidote to the poisons of envy and jealousy, and the key to unlocking an infinite source of joy for ourselves. To truly understand the luminous quality of mudita, we must first be willing to look deeply into its shadow. The direct opposite of sympathetic joy, its far enemy, is envy. Envy, and its close cousin jealousy, are among the most corrosive and painful states of mind we can experience. Envy is the painful feeling that arises when we see that someone else has something, be it success, talent, beauty, or wealth that we desire for ourselves. It is the bitter thought, "I want what you have." Jealousy is the fearful reaction to the perceived threat of losing something we already possess to someone else. Both are rooted in a deep and painful sense of personal lack. When we are in the grip of envy, we are in a state of self-inflicted torture. We suffer not only from our own perceived inadequacy, but also from the happiness of the other person. Their joy becomes a source of our pain. This is a tragic and deeply unskillful way to live. The root cause of this painful state is a fundamental delusion, a wrong view about the nature of happiness itself. Envy arises from the scarcity mentality, the deeply ingrained, often unconscious belief that happiness and good fortune are limited resources. We see life as a kind of zero-sum game, where if someone else gets a bigger slice of the pie, our own slice must necessarily be smaller. Their success feels like it diminishes our own. Their light seems to cast a shadow on us. The practice of mudita challenges this delusion at its very core. It is founded on the wisdom that happiness is not a finite commodity. The light of another person's candle does not diminish our own. In fact, when brought together, they create even more light. The joy of another person, if we can learn to connect with it, does not subtract from our own happiness. It adds to it. The ego, our constructed sense of a separate self, is the chief protector of this scarcity mentality. The ego is a creature of comparison. It constantly measures itself against others, seeking to establish its worth and its ranking. From the ego's perspective, another person's success can feel like a direct personal affront, a threat to its fragile sense of identity. To practice mudita is to begin to see through this illusion of the separate self. It is to recognize that, at a deeper level, we are all interconnected. Your happiness is not a threat to my happiness. It is a contribution to the overall happiness of the world in which I live. There is also a near enemy to mudita, a quality that looks similar on the surface but is fundamentally different. This is a kind of giddy exuberance or attachment-based joy. For example, a parent might feel immense joy when their child wins an award. A loyal fan might feel ecstatic when their sports team wins a championship. While these feelings are not necessarily unwholesome, they are not true mudita because they are still self-referential. The parent's joy is often tied to their identification. This is my child, and their success reflects well on me. The fan's joy is based on an arbitrary division. My team won, and your team lost. True mudita is selfless and boundless. It is the ability to rejoice in the success of a complete stranger, a colleague, or even a rival, not because it benefits us in any way, but simply because happiness, virtue, and success are beautiful qualities in themselves, worthy of celebration wherever they appear. Like the other practices of the heart, the cultivation of mudita is a gradual training. We begin where it is easiest. We find a quiet space and bring to mind a person for whom we have great affection and respect, a dear friend. But this time, instead of focusing on their difficulties as we would in the practice of compassion, we focus on their goodness and their joy. We call to mind their positive qualities, their kindness, their intelligence, their integrity, their sense of humor. We remember a time when we saw them genuinely happy, perhaps on their wedding day, or upon achieving a lifelong goal, or simply laughing with uninhibited delight. We hold that image of their radiant happiness in our mind. Instead of just being a passive observer of their joy, we make the conscious intention to participate in it. We let their happiness touch our own heart. We allow a genuine smile to form on our own face. We feel the warmth and lightness that comes from celebrating another's well-being. To support this intention, we can use phrases of appreciative joy, silently repeating them in our heart. I am so happy for you. Your happiness brings me joy. May your happiness and good fortune continue and increase. How wonderful it is to see you so happy. We rest in this shared joy, allowing it to fill our being. This first step shows us that the capacity for mudita is already within us. Next, we stretch this capacity by turning our attention to a neutral person. We bring to mind someone we see but do not know well, someone towards whom we feel no strong like or dislike. As we go about our day, we can practice looking for moments of happiness in the lives of strangers. We might see a couple holding hands and laughing, a child playing with joyful abandon in a park, or a group of friends sharing an animated conversation. The untrained mind would simply ignore these scenes. The practice of mudita is to pause, even for a moment, and to appreciate this happiness. We can offer a silent, heartfelt wish. How wonderful. May your joy continue. This simple practice begins to transform our perception of the world. Instead of a cold and indifferent place, it becomes a landscape filled with countless small moments of joy, all of which are now available to us as sources of our own happiness. The ultimate training ground for mudita is to try and extend this appreciative joy to someone we find difficult or even a rival. This is, without question, the most challenging aspect of the practice. How can we possibly be happy for the success of someone we dislike or who has surpassed us in some way? To even attempt this requires great wisdom and self-compassion. The goal is not to force an artificial feeling of happiness. The goal is to notice the painful contraction of envy as it arises and to see if we can soften it, even just a little. We can begin by acknowledging the truth. I am feeling envy. This is a painful state. Then, we can try to find some small aspect of their success that we can appreciate from a wider perspective. Perhaps we cannot rejoice in their financial success, but we can reflect that maybe this success will make them a more secure and less fearful person, which is a benefit to the world. Perhaps we can't rejoice in the praise they receive, but we can rejoice in the universal human desire for happiness that their success represents. The aim is to find a way to wish them well, even in a small way, as a means of freeing our own heart from the painful, self-imposed prison of envy. The highest and purest form of mudita is said to be rejoicing in the virtue of others. When we see someone perform an act of great kindness, courage, generosity, or wisdom, we can feel an uplifting, inspiring joy. This joy is completely free from any self-interest. It is a celebration of the goodness inherent in humanity. To delight in the goodness of others purifies our own mind and inspires us to cultivate those same qualities in ourselves. The benefits of this practice are truly profound. It is the direct and specific antidote to the poison of envy, one of the most painful and socially destructive emotions. It makes our own heart light, open, and buoyant. But most beautifully, it makes our potential for happiness literally infinite. If we can only be happy when good things happen to us, our opportunities for joy are, by nature, quite limited and infrequent. But if we can learn to genuinely rejoice in the happiness and success of every single being we meet or hear about, our world is transformed into a boundless field of joy. Every birth, every wedding, every graduation, every act of kindness, every moment of laughter becomes a source of our own happiness. Our small, personal well of joy becomes connected to the vast, inexhaustible ocean of the world's joy. The seed of this beautiful quality exists in all of us. Think of a loving parent watching their child achieve something wonderful. A father might have experienced a certain satisfaction in his own life's accomplishment, but the joy he feels when he sees his own child graduate from school, or score the winning goal, or perform an act of great kindness, is of a different order entirely. It is a joy that is utterly selfless, expansive, and overwhelming. It is a happiness for another that feels even greater than happiness for oneself. This is the natural seed of mudita. The practice is simply to learn how to nurture this seed, to water it with our attention, and to learn to extend this boundless, parental joy beyond the narrow confines of our own family, to encompass all beings without exception. So we have cultivated metta, the wish for all to be happy. We have developed karuna, the heart's tender response to suffering. And we have now practiced mudita, the selfless joy in the happiness that already exists. Our heart is becoming a truly remarkable place, open, responsive, tender, and joyful. But to hold all of this, the intense wish for others' well-being, the tender pain of compassion, the expansive delight of sympathetic joy without being thrown off balance by the ups and downs of life, without becoming attached to the pleasant and overwhelmed by the painful, requires a final, stabilizing quality. We need a deep and unshakable centeredness, a profound inner balance. This brings us to the fourth and culminating divine abode, the quiet and spacious practice of upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the radiant states of the heart, cultivating a boundless loving kindness for the happiness of all, a tender compassion for their suffering, and a selfless joy in their good fortune. Our heart, through this training, has become open, responsive, and vast. Yet, for these beautiful qualities to become truly unshakable, for them to be a source of constant strength rather than potential exhaustion, they require a final, grounding element. This is the fourth and culminating of the four divine abodes, the practice of upekkha, or equanimity. If metta, karuna, and mudita are the magnificent, powerful sails of our spiritual vessel, catching the winds of life, then upekkha is the deep, heavy keel that keeps the ship perfectly balanced and stable, no matter how fierce the storm. It is the profound and quiet center in the eye of the hurricane, the unshakable peace that is born not of avoiding life, but of meeting it fully, with wisdom and an open heart. It is absolutely essential to understand what equanimity is not, for it is perhaps the most misunderstood of all the heart practices. Its most common counterfeit, its far enemy, is indifference. Indifference is a cold, contracted state. It is a shutting down of the heart, a form of aversion that says, "I don't care," as a defense mechanism against being hurt. Indifference is born of fear and ignorance. It builds walls. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born of wisdom and courage. It is a state of immense warmth, connection, and care, but a care that is free from the feverish grip of clinging, expectation, and the need to control. The indifferent mind is closed and numb. The equanimous mind is wide open, luminous, and exquisitely sensitive, able to experience the full spectrum of life without being thrown off balance. The indifferent person sees another fall and walks away, not wanting to be bothered. The equanimous person sees another fall, feels the fullness of compassion, and offers exactly the help that is needed, without being shattered if that help is refused or proves ineffective. There is also a near enemy to equanimity, a more subtle counterfeit that can arise in our practice. This is a kind of dull, spaced-out neutrality, a stoic resignation that lacks the vibrant clarity of true upekkha. It is the mind that simply wants to be left alone, to remain undisturbed. This too is a subtle form of aversion, a turning away from the richness of experience. True equanimity is never dull. It is a state of profound presence and peace, a quiet aliveness that is capable of holding both the most intense sorrow and the most sublime joy in a vast, open, and loving embrace. This profound state of balance is not something we can force or manufacture through sheer will. It arises naturally as the fruit of deep insight, as the culmination of the wisdom we have been cultivating throughout our journey on the path. The first pillar of this wisdom is a deep, visceral understanding of the law of karma. The equanimous mind sees with unshakable clarity that all beings are the owners of their actions and the heirs of their results. We understand that while we can love, support, guide, and help others, we cannot ultimately choose their actions for them, nor can we erase the consequences of the seeds they have sown. This understanding frees us from the exhausting and arrogant burden of trying to be the savior and controller of everyone around us. We do our best, we offer our help from a place of genuine compassion, and then we let go of the outcome, respecting the autonomy and karmic path of the other person. This is not carelessness, it is profound respect. The second pillar is the wisdom of anicca, or impermanence. Equanimity is the lived experience of this truth. The mind that is truly equanimous knows, not just intellectually, but in its very bones, that everything changes. Pleasure arises and passes away. Pain arises and passes away. Gain is followed by loss, which is followed by gain. Praise turns to blame, and fame fades into obscurity. Because the equanimous mind does not desperately cling to the pleasant or violently resist the unpleasant, it remains stable and at ease amidst the ceaseless flow. It learns to rest in the dynamic, ever-changing process of life itself, finding its peace not in a particular outcome, but in its own balanced nature. The third and deepest pillar is the wisdom of anatta, or no self. Equanimity is the fruit of seeing that there is no solid, separate, unchanging self at the center of our experience that needs to be defended, promoted, or protected. When praise comes, the equanimous mind recognizes it as a fleeting sound, a temporary, pleasant vibration. It does not cling to it to build up a fragile ego. When blame or criticism comes, it recognizes this too, as a fleeting, unpleasant vibration. It does not take it personally, because it knows there is no ultimate person there to be attacked. This depersonalization of life's events is a source of immense freedom. The slings and arrows of fortune can no longer find a solid target to hit. With this foundation of wisdom, equanimity serves as the great balancing factor for the other three divine abodes, allowing them to reach their full and perfected potential. It balances metta, loving kindness, preventing it from turning into selfish attachment, possessiveness, or the deep grief that comes from clinging to another. It allows us to love purely and freely. It balances karuna, compassion, providing the inner strength and spaciousness to bear witness to immense suffering without being crushed by it, thus preventing the burnout that can come from unguarded empathy. It allows our compassion to be sustainable and wise. It balances mudita, sympathetic joy, by preventing it from becoming a giddy, heedless excitement or a form of attachment to another person's worldly success. It allows our joy to be pure and stable. Upekkha is the vast, open sky that allows the sun of metta, the rain of karuna, and the fair weather of mudita to all come and go without disturbing its own fundamental nature. The ultimate test and expression of equanimity is found in our ability to face what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions that blow constantly throughout every human life, coming in 4 pairs of opposites. They are gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. The ordinary, untrained mind is like a leaf caught in these winds, helplessly blown about. It is ecstatic when it experiences gain, pleasure, praise, and fame. It is utterly crushed and plunged into despair when it experiences loss, pain, blame, and disrepute. Our entire life becomes a frantic chase after the first 4 and a desperate flight from the last 4. The mind that has cultivated equanimity, however, becomes like a great mountain. Imagine a mighty mountain, its base rooted deep in the solid earth, its peaks soaring into the sky. Fierce gales blow from the east, trying to push it over. Harsh winds howl from the west. The sweetest, most gentle breezes caress it from the south. Torrential rains lash its slopes. The summer sun beats down upon it, and the winter snows blanket it in silence. Through all of these changing, temporary conditions, the great mountain remains. It is not indifferent to the weather. It fully feels the wind and the rain and the sun. But its deep-rooted stability is unshaken. It is not defined or moved by the weather that simply passes over it. The mind of Upeka is like this mountain. The worldly winds may blow with all their force, but the mind remains grounded, spacious, stable, and profoundly at peace. This is the true meaning of inner silence, not an absence of noise, but an unshakable stillness at the very core of our being. A peace that surpasses all understanding. Upeka, then, is the crown jewel of the heart practices. It is the quiet culmination of the entire path, a state of profound peace that is born of wisdom and suffused with a boundless, intelligent love. It is the perfection of freedom, a heart that is open to the entire universe, yet is not bound by any part of it. Having traveled this long and profound path from seeing the nature of our modern emptiness, to understanding the core truths of existence, to training the mind in ethics and concentration, and finally, to cultivating a heart of boundless love and unshakable balance, we have gathered all the necessary threads. Now, we can begin to weave them together, to see how this entire journey redefines the meaning of our life and the nature of the imprint we leave upon this world. We began this journey together, starting from a place many of us know well, a feeling of being adrift in the restless sea of modern life, weighed down by anxiety and a sense of disconnection. We looked directly into the heart of our dissatisfaction, not as a personal failure, but as a fundamental condition of existence. We explored the great, liberating truths of impermanence, the constant flow of all things, and of no self, the realization that the fixed, solid identity we cling to is a beautiful illusion. And then, we were given a map, a timeless guide called the Noble Eightfold Path. We walked its steps together, from clarifying our view of reality and purifying our intentions, to cultivating speech and actions that cause no harm. We learned to train the mind through the gentle discipline of meditation. And finally, we turned our attention outward, learning to cultivate a heart that is boundless, radiating loving kindness, feeling compassion, sharing in the joy of others, and resting in the unshakable balance of equanimity. The true measure of your life, we have come to see, is not found in what you accumulate, but in the depth of your presence. It is not the echo you create in the world, but the silence you discover within yourself. Peace, we now understand, is not a distant destination to be reached only after every problem has been solved. It is not a reward for a life perfectly lived. It is an internal state, a quiet sanctuary that can be accessed right now, in this very moment, through understanding and through practice. This is the meaning of resting in the inner silence. It is not merely about physical sleep, but about allowing the mind to finally come home, to rest in its own true, luminous nature. This path does not ask you to become someone else. It is an invitation to discover who you have always been, beneath all the layers of anxiety, expectation, and conditioning. It is a journey of returning. With every breath, you have the opportunity to come home. The peace you have been searching for is not in some other place or some other time. It is here. It has always been here, patiently waiting for your recognition. Your mark upon this world is not a monument or a legacy. It is the quality of awareness, the quality of peace that you bring to each and every moment.